Chapter 788. With Gu Shanshui leading the way, they quickly arrived at Chiang Rai. Gu Shanshui found a place to stay. The place he wanted to go was near Chiang Rai. Chiang Rai was somewhat different from Mong Sat. There were many people like Gu Shanshui who had tattoos and Buddha plaque. After dinner, Li Mabai, Butterfly, and company went out to stroll around Chiang Rai. As for Zhou, he stayed at his place with no intention of leaving. As Chiang Rai's dimensional zones weren't in the city, he couldn't see them even if he left. Mr. Zhou, we're going to catch the bookworm tomorrow. There are some things I need to clarify today to prevent any trouble later, Gu Shanshui said when he came to Zhouwen's room. Master Gu, please speak. Zhouwen let Gu Shanshui in. The place I'm going to catch the corpse bug is called Dragon Corpse River. Legend has it that a dragon once died there. I don't know if it's true or not, but Dragon Corpse Valley is very dangerous. The Gu inside are at least at the epic stage. Occasionally, mythical Gu will appear. Even the members of the Dugu family have to be careful when entering Dragon Corpse Valley. After a pause, Gu Shanshui continued, "The corpse bug I want to catch is in the most dangerous area of Dragon Corpse River. There are many taboos inside. Furthermore, that corpse bug is very special. I suspect that the corpse bug is a mythical Gu born from the Dragon Corp. When the time comes, even with the help of the Phoenix Divine Bird, it probably won't be easy to subdue it. We can't be careless." Following that, Gu Shanshui took out a self-made map and explained the situation to Zhouwen in detail. Not many people knew of the existence of the corpse bug. Furthermore, it wasn't easy to lure it out. It required some special means. Gu Shanshui explained his plan and means in detail so that Zhouwen could help him when the time came. "Mr. Zhou, only the two of us know the secret of the corpse bug. Don't leak it. Otherwise, it will definitely cause others to vie for it," Gu Shanshui exhorted. "Master Gu, don't worry. I won't spread this matter," Zhouwen said. "That's good. Then I won't disturb your rest, Mr. Zhou." Gu Shanshui bade farewell and left. Zhouwen continued grinding dungeons. The 9 black dragons in the deer-chasing underground sea had already respawned. Zhouwen went to grind the 9 dragons again. Due to his previous experience, it went very smoothly this time. After killing the black dragon with the Wu Dragon Pearl, the other 8 black dragons immediately became scattered. They could only be slaughtered by Zhouwen's companion beast. When he killed the 6th black dragon, Zhouwen heard a ding as a black companion egg dropped. Companion egg! Zhouwen was overjoyed as he turned invisible and picked up the companion egg to check its stats. Demon Blood True Dragon, Kuan Mythical Life Providence, Demon Dragon Bloodline Incomplete, Life Spirit, Kunlun Incomplete, Wheel of Fortune, Draconic Realm Incomplete, Strength, 80 Speed, 80 Constitution, 80 Essence Energy, 80 Innate Skills, Dragon Breath, Devil Dragon Transformation, Devil Dragon True Body, Dragon Rage, Companion Form, Dragon Scale Armor Incomplete. Why are there so many missing parts? Zhouwen couldn't help but be disappointed when he saw the Demon Blood True Dragon. Its Life Providence, Life Soul, Wheel of Fortune, and Companion Form were all incomplete. Its stats were only 80. Could it be that I have to gather all 9 black dragons to unleash the might of the Demon Blood True Dragon? Zhouwen hatched the Demon Blood True Dragon and summoned it in its companion form. Although the dragon scale armor was incomplete, it was a complete set of dragon scale armor when it was summoned. It enveloped the blood-colored avatar's entire body, making it impossible to tell how it was incomplete. Regardless, it's finally a mythical armor. Zhouwen looked at the black dragon scale armor on the blood-colored avatar. It looked like its defense was pretty good. Just as Zhouwen was sizing up the dragon scale armor, he suddenly heard a familiar voice coming from the nearby corridor. "Old worm, can you do it?" "Of course. It was an accident this time. I'll definitely be able to capture that mythical Gu the next time I bring you there. I've heard that countless times. Can't you use something new?" "Don't worry. I have my own plans. Trust your master. Don't. You're not my master yet. It's only a matter of time. I really suspect that you are from the Dugu family. It's so difficult to capture a mythical gu. If it wasn't for the fact that Honey is so beautiful and doesn't look like a bad person, I would really suspect that you are a cheat. Worm Dugu and Li Xian? Zhou listened carefully for a while and immediately knew who the two people were. Zhou hurriedly opened the door and walked out. Indeed, he saw Worm Dugu and Li Xian talking as they walked. They were about to enter the room. Li Xian. Zhou hurriedly stopped Li Xian. Zhou? Why are you here? Li Xian was pleasantly surprised when he saw Zhou. He ran over and hugged Zhou's shoulder. As expected of my good brother. You came to look for me because you were worried when you heard that I came to the South District, right? You aren't a chick. What's there to worry about? I came to Chiang Rai for something. I didn't know you were here, Zhou said. Brother, you really don't know how to speak. Do you know that your words hurt my young heart? Li Xian held his chest with his hand, looking so pained that he couldn't breathe. Your second brother is here too. Zhou ignored him and continued. After Zhou said that, he couldn't help but be taken aback. Li Mabai didn't need to come to Chiang Rai, but he had followed. Zhou wondered if he knew that Li Xian was in Chiang Rai. However, on second thought, it didn't seem likely. No one knew where Li Xian had gone with Worm Dugu. When Li Xian heard that Li Mabai was here, the smile on his face vanished as his expression turned solemn. What's he doing here? Li Xian asked. Zhou recounted how Li Mabai had invited him to the Valley of No Return to find the guardian cocoon. When Li Xian heard that Li Mabai had failed the contract, his expression darkened slightly. From the looks of it, he still minded the matter of Li Mabai transferring his life soul to him. By the way, there's one more thing I want to tell you. Zhou wanted to tell Li Xian about Xia Zhihuang. Li Xian's elder brother had very likely been harmed by Xia Zhihuang. Now that Xia Zhihuang was dead, this matter actually had nothing to do with the Xia family. There was no need for Li Xian to risk his life against the Xia family. Eldest disciple, have you thought it through and specially came to acknowledge me as your master? Worm Dugu walked over at that moment and said to Zhou with a smile. His gaze was still constantly sizing up the chick on Zhou's shoulder. No, Zhou answered. Ahem, don't be shy. Li Xian has already agreed to be my disciple, but I'm a very clear person. I took a fancy to you first, so you are my eldest disciple. This seniority can't be messed up, Worm Dugu said with a smile without changing his expression. Don't spout nonsense. I didn't agree to be your disciple. You have to beat me in a bet. Perhaps if you lose the bet, you will have to take me as your master in the future? When that happens, you will have to call old Zhou Uncle Master, Li Xian said with a twitch of his lips. What's going on? Zhou asked Li Xian in puzzlement. Chapter 789. Worm Dugu rushed to say, I think Li Xian's talent is passable, so I plan on taking him in as my disciple. You can also consider it. It's not too late to regret becoming my eldest disciple. Zhou immediately understood what was going on. Li Xian's life soul had fused with Li Mabai's evil King Gu, so he had a portion of the Gu's characteristics. Worm Dugu must have taken a fancy to this, so he wanted to take Li Xian in as his disciple. However, Li Xian and Zhou were good friends. Worm Dugu was afraid that Li Xian would find it too embarrassing if he knew that he wanted to take Zhou as his master. Therefore, he refused to acknowledge him. Come on. I wonder who stood at Zhou's dorm door and kept saying that he wanted to find master. Li Xian curled his lips and said, Don't worry. I, Li Xian, am a man of my word. As long as you can beat me in the bet, I'll definitely take you as my master. However, if you lose. To Zhou's surprise, Li Xian already knew that Worm Dugu wanted to take him as his master. Stop. It's impossible for me, Worm Dugu, to lose, Worm Dugu immediately said. Zhou asked Li Xian what was going on. After Li Xian explained the matter in detail, Zhou Wen knew why Worm Dugu had persuaded Li Xian to come to the South District. After Zhou Wen left, Worm Dugu happened to bump into Li Xian, who had gone to Zhou Wen's place to get something. The two of them had a verbal conflict. Worm Dugu wanted to use Gu to deal with Li Xian, but his Gu didn't dare approach Li Xian. This alarmed Worm Dugu. After many tests, Worm Dugu realized that Li Xian's life soul was the nemesis of Gu. Raising a phoenix was also to restrain Gu, and Li Xian himself could restrain all sorts of Gu. With such a talent, Worm Dugu was tempted. He insisted on making Li Xian his disciple and learn how to rear Gu from him. Li Xian was naturally unwilling, but Worm Dugu didn't give up. He showed Li Xian the magical effects of many Gu, and even said that he wanted to help Li Xian capture mythical Gu. When Li Xian saw the strange and magical abilities of the Gu, he was really tempted. However, because Worm Dugu wanted to take Zhou Wen as his master from the beginning, Li Xian wasn't too willing to be his disciple. Therefore, he made a bet with Worm Dugu. If Worm Dugu could capture the famous Ice Silkworm Gu King, Li Xian would agree to be his disciple and learn how to rear Gu from him. The Ice Silkworm Gu King would be a gift from Worm Dugu to his disciple. If Worm Dugu couldn't capture the Ice Silkworm Gu King, he would have to take Li Xian as his master and teach him how to rear Gu. Regardless of whether he wins or loses, Li Xian won't suffer a loss. For Worm Dugu to be willing to suffer such a huge loss, does he really think highly of Li Xian, or does he have other motives? Zhou Wen thought to himself, momentarily unsure. If it weren't for someone causing trouble, I would have long captured the Ice Silkworm Gu King and taken him in as a disciple, Worm Dugu said. Li Xian curled his lips and said disdainfully, if someone hadn't barged in and diverted the Ice Silkworm Gu King's attention, I'm afraid we would have died there. To think you call yourself the best Gu rearing expert in the South District. How embarrassing! Li Xian recounted what had happened. Worm Dugu had originally taken Li Xian to capture the Ice Silkworm Gu King because he planned on using Li Xian's life soul to restrain the Ice Silkworm Gu King. With his abilities, he could capture it in one fell swoop. However, to his surprise, there wasn't one Ice Silkworm Gu King, but two. When they trapped one Ice Silkworm Gu King and thought they were about to succeed, the other Ice Silkworm Gu King suddenly appeared, catching Worm Dugu off guard. The two of them nearly died there. Thankfully, a group of people happened to want to capture the Ice Silkworm Gu King. They diverted the attention of one of the Ice Silkworm Gu Kings, allowing them to escape. Now, that group of people is still setting up a trap to capture the Ice Silkworm Gu King. I think they are much better than this old man. I reckon they have already succeeded, Li Xian said. Bullsh *T. Do you think it's that easy to capture the Ice Silkworm Gu King? With those good-for-nothings from the Xiao family, they won't be able to capture the Ice Silkworm Gu King in another 10 years. It's more likely they will all die there, Worm Dugu shouted as he jumped. Xiao family? Which Xiao family? Zhou Wen's heart stirred as he asked Worm Dugu. Which other Xiao family can it be? Only in a small place like Chiang Rai can the Xiao family gain a foothold, Worm Dugu said disdainfully. I heard that the Xiao family is very powerful. Not only are they good at nurturing Gu, but they also know how to use black magic and Kumen Thong. The Xiao family also has a mythical Kumen Thong, Zhou Wen said. Worm Dugu seemed to be very disdainful of the Xiao family. When he heard that, he stroked his beard and said, there are many big shots who know black magic, Kumen Thong, and Buddha plaques in the West District. It's impossible for the Xiao family to have their turn. They can gain a foothold in Chiang Rai not because of their superb techniques, but because they don't abide by the rules and are ruthless. Do you know how the Xiao family's mythical companion beasts came about? How? Zhou Wen and Li Xian looked at Worm Dugu curiously. More than 20 years ago there was a family in Chiang Rai. Both husband and wife raised Gu. Furthermore, they were rather famous in the South District. They raised Gu, but they never used them to harm others. Later on, the wife got pregnant. Ever since she got pregnant, there would often be wild goo bugs around her house. Those goo worms were guarding outside his house, but none of them entered. It was as if they were guarding something. The closer it was to the wife's due date, the more goo appeared near her house. There were even mythical goo. After taking a deep breath, Worm Dugu continued, "Back then, everyone said that the child the wife was pregnant with was the reincarnation of the goo god, which was why the goo were protecting it. Although the goo wouldn't harm them, they caused a lot of trouble for the neighbors nearby. Therefore, the couple had no choice but to move to a remote place. Not long after, someone discovered that the couple had died tragically at home. The wife's abdomen had been sliced open, and the baby was nowhere to be seen." Zhou and Li Xian shuddered when they heard that. They heard Worm Dugu continue, "Most people believe that the goo harmed the couple and took away their child. However, our Dugu family has a disciple who has a good relationship with the couple. According to him, the Shao family's family head had a good relationship with the couple back then. When he went to meet the couple, he even met the Shao family's family head. Furthermore, more than a year after the couple's death, the Shao family produced a powerful Kumen Thong. Furthermore, ever since then, the Shao family, who only knew Kumen Thong and black magic, also began to rear goo. Don't you think this is too much of a coincidence? It's a coincidence, but it might not be related. Does your Dugu family have any evidence?" Li Xian asked. "If there was evidence, we would have wiped out the Shao family long ago. How could we have let them live until now? However, I think there's a high chance that it was done by the Shao family," Worm Dugu said. Zhou felt that what Worm Dugu said made sense. Although he didn't know much about the Shao family, he had met Shao Si before. He knew how ruthless he was. He would definitely do such a thing. "Wait, the Shao family wants Wang Chan. Don't tell me they want to use her to refine Kumen Thong?" Zhou hurriedly asked Worm Dugu, "Do babies have to be used to refine Kumen Thong? Can older people refine Kumen Thong?" Generally speaking, children who die at the age of 0 to 12 can be used to create earth children and man children. That was the method of the past. The method now is even crueler. Worm Dugu didn't explain in detail. 0 to 12 years old? Zhou thought for a moment. Wang Chan looked like she was 11 or 12 years old. Furthermore, she had the goddess of misfortune life providence. That was unusual to begin with. Sogu. Chapter 790. If an 11 or 12-year-old child has already condensed a life providence, and it's very special, will it be helpful in refining Kumen Thong? Zhou asked again. "I'm not too sure about that. After all, I specialize in nurturing goo. I only know some basic knowledge about Kumen Thong. It's best you find a professional to ask," Worm Dugu said. Zhou chatted with them for a while before bidding farewell to Gu Shanshui. He wanted to figure out if Wang Chan's life providence would affect Kumen Thong. After knocking on Gu Shanshui's door, Zhou roughly explained the situation. However, he didn't mention the Shao family or Wang Chan. Apart from Heaven Child, Earth Child and Man Child are actually unorthodox. Typically speaking, one should use babies that die young or are aborted to make Earth children or Man children. Only then will the resentment be greater and the spirituality be stronger. As a baby grows older, its spirituality will become weaker and weaker. The older it is, the less suitable it is to make Kumen Thong. 12 years old is the theoretical limit, but very few people will really use such an old child to make Kumen Thong. Unless the child is very special and has a special life providence, it can be used to make some special evil Kumen Thong or Kumen Ne. After hearing Gu Shanshui's explanation, Zhou was even more certain that the Shao family wanted Wang Chan because of the refinement of Kumen Thong. If that's the case, this Shao family really deserves death. Zhou was somewhat angry. Zhou planned on visiting the Shao family after returning from Dragon Corpse River to see if they really had such plans. If they really had such plans, Zhou didn't mind helping Wang Chan eliminate any future troubles. It could be considered a form of returning Wang Lu a favor. When Li Mabai returned, Zhou told him that Li Xian was here as well. Li Mabai only said indifferently that it had nothing to do with him before returning to his room. The next morning, Zhou, Gu Shanshui, Li Mabai, and company headed for Dragon Corpse River. After Li Xian and Worm Dugu made some preparations, they still had to capture the ice silkworm Gu King. Those without ability should just stay at home and wait for death. Why come out to court death? Li Mabai said coldly when Zhou and company parted ways with Li Xian. Li Xian didn't say a word and left with Worm Dugu. Zhou didn't know what to say. All he could do was pretend not to hear and walk ahead with Gu Shanshui. The Dragon Corpse River was named after a dragon was buried in the river. Before the dimensional storms, this was only a legend. No one had really seen a dragon corpse or dragon skeleton. However, after the dimensional storms, Dragon Corpse River became a dimensional zone with many taboos. For example, after entering the Dragon Corpse River, one must not touch the water of the Dragon Corpse River. Otherwise, one would turn into a zombie. Also, one couldn't fly on the Dragon Corpse River, and they couldn't drip their blood into the river. Also, women who were on their menstrual cycle couldn't enter the Dragon Corpse River. Therefore, Zhou and company could only enter the Dragon Corpse River by boat. The boat they took was bought by Gu Shanshui from a nearby family. According to Gu Shanshui, the materials of the boat had been specially treated. Gu didn't like the smell of the wood on the boat, so they typically wouldn't approach it. Li, Dragon Corpse River is too dangerous. Are you sure you want to go with me? Before boarding the boat, Gu Shanshui asked Li Mabai again. There's Zhou. There won't be too much danger. Just treat it as broadening my horizons, Li Mabai said with a smile. Gu Shanshui didn't say anything else. He led everyone onto the boat and rowed away from the riverbank, heading upstream. Dragon Corpse River wasn't very big, but the moment the boat left the riverbank, it felt extremely wide. Furthermore, there was a thick fog on the river surface. If it wasn't for an experienced person like Gu Shanshui, it would have been very easy for them to get lost in the fog. Zhou originally wanted to help Gu Shanshui row the boat, but Gu Shanshui told him, on Dragon Corpse River the eyes can lie. He has to rely on his senses to find where the corpse bug is, so he can only row the boat himself. After the boat entered the fog, Gu Shanshui took out a container made of clay and filled it with river water. Then, he placed the container at the bow of the boat. Finally, he took out a gu that looked like a loach and placed it in the container. In such a place, Zhou wasn't in the mood to game. His psyche was highly concentrated as Truth Listener constantly scanned his surroundings to prevent any possible danger. Using Truth Listener, Zhou could sense that there were many dimensional creatures swimming in the nearby river. However, they didn't approach the wooden boat. It was unknown if it was because of the wooden boat itself or the Gu Shanshui had placed in the jar. The wooden boat slowly rowed across the dark river. Zhou and company abided by the taboos of Dragon Corpse River, so no danger occurred. As the wooden boat slowly sailed, Zhou suddenly felt cold sweat break out on his back. A terrifying palpitation made his heart pound. With Truth Listener's ability, Zhou realized that there seemed to be a huge shadow staring at them from the bottom of Dragon Corpse River. Plop, plop. The gu in the jar suddenly jumped as though it had been given a fright, causing Gu Shanshui's expression to turn solemn. Gu Shanshui directly grabbed the gu from the jar and placed it in the river. The gu desperately swam into the distance, but before it could go far, it suddenly vanished, leaving only ripples on the river surface. With the gu gone, Gu Shanshui heaved a sigh of relief. The wooden boat slowly rowed, but the shadow at the bottom of the river was just too huge. After rowing for more than 10 minutes, the wooden boat was still above the shadow, unable to row out. Zhou tensed up. He didn't dare use Truth Listener to scan the shadow, afraid that it would alarm it. When the time came, the wooden boat would capsize. Zhou wasn't afraid, but the others on the boat probably wouldn't be able to survive. Thankfully, the shadow didn't move. Ever since it sucked the goo, it had only been watching them from the bottom of the river. Gu Shanshui rowed for more than half an hour before the wooden boat finally rowed out of the shadow's range. Only when the feeling of being watched vanished did Zhou secretly heave a sigh of relief. I wonder what's at the bottom of the river? Could it really be a dragon? However, it feels different from the dragons I've seen in the past. Its aura is completely different. In such a place, Zhou didn't want to cause trouble. It would naturally be best if he didn't have to fight. After rowing for 4 to 5 hours, a small island appeared on the river in front of him. The island was at most the size of a football field. There was a small mountain less than 100 meters tall on it. It was a typical volcano. From the mouth of the mountain, a large amount of thick fog spewed out. The thick fog above the Dragon Corpse River seemed to be spewed out from the small volcano. It's there. The corpse bug is in the volcano. After we go up the mountain, I'll lure the corpse bug out. Mr. Zhou, you can follow the plan. Gu Shanshui pulled the wooden boat to the shore and led everyone ashore. Zhou already knew Gu Shanshui's plan. All he needed to do was wait by the side. Only after the corpse bug was lured out by Gu Shanshui would he take action. Gu Shanshui got everyone to stay at the foot of the mountain and only took Gu Lu and Gu He up the mountain. They almost crawled forward. After arriving at the volcano crater, they took out some small bottles they had prepared. Every once in a while, they would pour a bottle of yellow liquid into the volcano crater. Zhou had heard from Gu Shanshui that the liquid was called corpse oil. It was extracted from corpses. Only with this could he lure the corpse bug out of the volcano. This was something that required a lot of patience. After 7 to 8 hours and more than 100 bottles of corpse oil were poured, there was finally a commotion in the volcano crater. Chapter 791. At the foot of the mountain, Zhou and company heard cracking sounds coming from the volcanic crater. When Gu Shanshui and company heard the sound, they slowly retreated from the volcanic crater. As they retreated, they poured the corpse oil on the ground, forming a thin line. Soon, Gu Shanshui and company retreated and hid behind the rocks with Zhou and company. Soon, there was a commotion from the volcanic crater. A bug crawled out. Isn't this a horned beetle? Zhou sized up the bug from afar and saw that it looked like a horned beetle. It was dressed in black armor and had a forked horn at the front of its head. The bug crawled out bit by bit, crawled along the corpse oil, and licked all the corpse oil on the ground clean. Seeing the bug crawl down bit by bit, Gu Shanshui's expression turned solemn. Gu Lu and Gu He also looked very nervous. Gu Shanshui looked at Zhou, who nodded slightly. Gu Shanshui took out a metal container. It looked like a furnace, but it also looked a little like a cauldron. It was unknown what it was. While the corpse bug was still licking the corpse oil, Gu Shanshui placed the metal container in a crack in the rock and poured dozens of bottles of corpse oil in, almost filling the metal container. The smell emitted by the large amount of corpse oil immediately attracted the corpse bug's attention. It spread its transparent wings and flew towards the metal container. It landed on the edge of the metal container and extended its head to suck the corpse oil inside. The container was a little deep. After the corpse bug sucked half of it, it couldn't reach the corpse oil below. All it could do was crawl into the container. Now, Gu Shanshui immediately gestured for Zhou to take action as he ran towards the metal container. Zhou got the chick to fly over and land at the edge of the container. When the corpse bug saw the chick, it wasn't as afraid as ordinary Gu. It immediately bared its fangs and brandished its claws to confront the chick. However, it could be seen that it was somewhat afraid of the chick. It didn't immediately attack and rush out. While it was hesitating, Gu Shanshui had already rushed to the metal container. He held the lid in one hand and sprinkled some unknown powder into the container with the other. Then, with a smack, he covered the container. Gu Shanshui pressed down on the metal container with one hand and wrapped a red rope around it with the other, hoping to tie it up. The metal container suddenly shook violently. Zhou summoned Tyrant Behemoth, and got it to help Gu Shanshui hold down the lid. With the help of Tyrant Behemoth's strength, the metal container immediately stopped shaking. However, there were continuous clanging sounds coming from inside. Gu Shanshui didn't care. All he did was wrap a rope around the metal container, and wrap the red rope around it. According to Gu Shanshui's plan, he had already trapped the corpse bug. All he needed to do was bring it back and slowly domesticate it. However, to his surprise, cracking sounds came from the metal container. Gu Shanshui's expression changed drastically as he knew that something was amiss. He immediately decided to throw the metal container out. The metal container exploded in midair, and the red string snapped inch by inch. The corpse bug flew out and bared its fangs and claws. It opened its mouth and spat out a thick fog that enveloped Gu Shanshui. "Retreat! That's corpse mist!" Gu Shanshui shouted and quickly retreated. At the same time, he summoned dozens of strange goo. After the goo came out, they tried their best to suck the corpse mist, but they didn't suck much before they all died. The chick let out a strange cry and spat out a mouthful of golden flames. When the golden flames encountered the corpse mist, it immediately burned and instantly burned to nothing. The chick also rushed towards the corpse bug and pecked at it with its beak. However, to everyone's surprise, the corpse bug was even faster than the chick. With a flap of its wings, its horn slammed into the chick, sending it flying. It landed on the ground and rolled far away before stopping. Ever since the chick was born, it had never suffered such a huge loss. It flew up as though its feathers were on edge, and spewed out large amounts of golden flames at the corpse bug, hoping to burn it to death. The corpse bug seemed to be somewhat afraid of the golden flames and didn't dare touch them. It flapped its wings to dodge the metal flames and flew towards the retreating Gu Shanshui. From the looks of it, the corpse bug's intelligence wasn't low. It even knew how to bully the weak and fear the strong. Gu Shanshui hurriedly summoned his goo to face the corpse bug, but when his goo encountered the corpse mist spewed out by the corpse bug, they immediately fell to the ground and twitched to death. They were useless. Zhou watched from the side and realized that the corpse mist spewed out by the corpse bug was more like a combination of bacteria or viruses than a poisonous mist. Once the bacteria and viruses invaded the goo's bodies, even the goo couldn't withstand it and quickly died. Those bacteria and viruses should be considered goo, right? This corpse bug is practically the mother of a goo. A random mouthful of fog it spits out contains a massive number of goo. Apart from the chick's flames that can restrain it, it's really difficult for others to deal with it. Zhou saw the chick fly over and spit out golden flames, burning the corpse mist away. Zhou didn't get Tyrant Behemoth to charge forward. Although Tyrant Behemoth was very strong, it was too huge. If it inhaled the bacteria and viruses in the corpse mist, no one knew what would happen. The corpse bug was the first goo that dared to fight the chick. However, it was still very afraid of the chick's golden flames. It didn't dare be touched by the golden flames. It used its speed to constantly change positions, hoping to rush over and bite the chick. The chick wasn't as fast as it, but its flight trajectory was very strange. Zhou watched for a while before widening his eyes. This fellow's flight trajectory resembled his transcendent flying immortal no matter how he looked at it. Holy sh*t, a bird actually learned my transcendent flying immortal movement technique? Zhou was dumbfounded. The chick used transcendent flying immortal to fight the corpse bug to a standstill. Its golden flames couldn't hit the corpse bug, and the corpse bug couldn't touch it. Master Gu, do you have a second plan? Zhou asked Gu Shanshui while the corpse bug and chick were fighting. Although he had many companion beasts on him, and it wasn't impossible for him to kill the corpse bug, it was meaningless for Gu Shanshui to kill it if he wanted it alive. Even the goo pot made of pure essence gold and the blood thread rope made of blood thread goo can't trap it. Even if I have a way to lure it over, it's useless. Gu Shanshui shook his head and smiled bitterly. Upon hearing Gu Shanshui's words, Zhou recalled something. He took out the calabash and handed it to Gu Shanshui. Give it a try. See if you can use this to trap the corpse bug. Gu Shanshui knew the origins of the calabash, and was delighted to see it. However, he couldn't find any holes despite flipping the calabash around. Chapter 792. If you inject your essence energy into it, it will automatically open a hole. However, it doesn't seem to have the ability to control the goo. It can only think of a way to get the goo in, Zhouwen said. Gu Shanshui gave it a try. Indeed, as long as he injected his essence energy, a gray fog would appear at the top of the calabash. He could place things through the gray fog. Gu Shanshui held the calabash and gritted his teeth. Then I can only give it a try. Gu Shanshui summoned his golden child life soul and got it to hold the calabash as it charged at the corpse bug. When the corpse bug saw Golden Child, it was like a bee seeing honey. It abandoned the chick and charged at Golden Child as though it wanted to devour it. Zhouwen was alarmed. He didn't know what Gu Shanshui's Golden Child life soul was to attract the corpse bug's attention. Golden Child could also use essence energy. He injected his essence energy into the calabash, and took the opportunity when the corpse bug rushed over to store the corpse bug inside. Unfortunately, Golden Child was only an epic life soul after all. Its speed was much slower than the corpse bug. With a flash, the corpse bug circled around the calabash and charged at Golden Child's head. Not good. Gu Shanshui's expression changed drastically. If his life soul was destroyed, it wasn't easy to condense a new one. In particular, his Golden Child life soul was actually a type of Kumanthong. However, his Kumanthong was a heaven child, not an unorthodox earth child or man child. It was extremely rare. Just as the corpse bug was about to slam into Golden Child's head, he suddenly saw a bamboo strike the calabash, causing the calabash's mouth to change direction and slam into the corpse bug. The corpse bug instantly vanished and was stored inside the calabash. Zhouwen extended his hand and beckoned back the sheathed bamboo blade that he had thrown out. Gu Shanshui was overjoyed as he hurriedly got Golden Child to retract his essence energy. The gray fog on the calabash vanished without a trace. A faint sound of collision came from the calabash. It was likely the corpse bug striking the calabash inside in a bid to rush out. However, it didn't seem to have much effect on the calabash. Mr. Zhou, it's all thanks to you that I was able to capture the corpse bug. I really don't know how to thank you, Gu Shanshui said excitedly. I'm just fulfilling my previous promise. Master Gu, don't take it to heart. However, when we return, you have to think of a way to find a container. I still have other uses for this calabash, Zhouwen said. I'll immediately think of a way to resolve it when I return, Gu Shanshui hurriedly said. Congratulations on fulfilling your wish, Master Gu. Li Mabai walked over with Butterfly and Mute, congratulating Gu Shanshui for finally catching the corpse bug. It's all thanks to you and Mr. Zhou. Gu Shanshui was very happy, but he didn't get carried away. Let's leave Dragon Corpse River first. It's not safe here. Everyone pushed the wooden boat down the river. Gu Shanshui steered the boat back the way they came. Not long after, Zhouwen felt that something was amiss. Previously, when they came here, the goo worms in the Dragon Corpse River did not get too close to this wooden boat. However, when they returned, the nearby goo worms were slowly approaching the wooden boat. Moreover, their numbers kept increasing. If it weren't for the fact that Birdie was on the ship, they would have already rushed up. Master Gu, something seems amiss, Zhouwen said to Gu Shanshui. Gu Shanshui had also discovered the abnormality. He nodded with a heavy expression and said, from the looks of it, it's because of the corpse bug that the goo in Dragon Corpse River have gathered. However, because of the divine bird, they don't dare approach. However, at this point, Gu Shanshui paused before saying, however, there might be an extremely terrifying creature in this Dragon Corpse River. If it's affected like these goo, I'm afraid even the divine bird's aura won't be able to intimidate it. When that happens, we will be in big trouble. Zhou immediately thought of the huge shadow at the bottom of the river when he came. Is there any solution? Zhou asked. Gu Shanxue shook his head slightly. Even the calabash and wooden boat can't block the signal emitted by the corpse bug. I'm afraid there's no good solution. After hesitating for a moment, Gu Shanxue said, If it really doesn't work, I'll release the corpse bug. Gu Lu and Gu He were alarmed as they hurriedly said, Master Gu, you can't. You finally caught the corpse bug after so much difficulty. This corpse bug is too important to you. You shouldn't let it go so easily. Perhaps there's no such terrifying creature in Dragon Corpse River, or perhaps that creature isn't affected by the corpse bug at all. Gu Shanxue shook his head and sighed. I never expected the corpse bug to be able to trigger the goo in Dragon Corpse River. It's indeed my wish to domesticate the corpse bug, but I can't gamble with so many of our lives. If we were on land, we could still think of a way, but we're in Dragon Corpse River now. There are too many taboos here. Once that creature appears, we will definitely die. With that said, Gu Shanxue prepared to open the calabash and release the corpse bug. Zhou suddenly said, Master Gu, even if you release the corpse bug now, I'm afraid it might not be able to quell the restlessness of the goo in Dragon Corpse River. We've already captured the corpse bug. With its intelligence and personality, do you think it will let us leave Dragon Corpse River safely even if we release it? Gu Shanxue smiled bitterly and said, I also know that Gu hold grudges, but apart from that, what else can we do? Li Mabai said, Master Gu, I think Zhou is right. Since Gu hold grudges, it's the same whether we release it or not. Why don't we keep it as a hostage? It's more like a bug. Perhaps there's a chance of leaving Dragon Corpse River. Gu Shanxue gritted his teeth. Now that things have come to this, we can only take a gamble. It was my carelessness this time that made everyone suffer with me. If I don't die today, I'll apologize to everyone in the future. We'll talk about those matters in the future. Now let's make some preparations. Even if there's really a creature in Dragon Corpse River that even the divine bird can't suppress, we won't just sit there and wait for death, Li Mabai said. The few of them discussed for a while, and began to make arrangements. Unfortunately, their range of movement was limited to the wooden boat. They couldn't leave the wooden boat and fly into the sky, nor could they touch water. They couldn't even be injured. This was too restrictive for them. Zhou thought for a moment and summoned Primordial Spore. He got it to enter the water to investigate the situation. No matter how powerful the goo in the water were, it was difficult for them to discover a companion beast like Primordial Spore. After Primordial Spore entered the water, it dived down according to Zhou Wen's instructions and headed forward. Everyone did what they could and allowed the wooden boat to continue moving forward. More and more goo worms gathered in the surrounding river, and they were getting closer and closer to the wooden boat. They could see the splashes in the distance with the naked eye, and there were all kinds of goo worms squeezing around in the water. It was strange and disgusting. Under Zhou Wen's observation, there was a huge shadow approaching the wooden boat at the bottom of the river. Chapter 793. What Gu Shanxue was worried about happened. The huge shadow was slowly rising from the bottom of the river. Because of its arrival, the goo insects that were crowding around the wooden boat all scrambled to escape, and soon disappeared without a trace. Layers of waves appeared on the river that didn't have many waves. Furthermore, the waves were getting bigger and bigger. With such obvious signs, Li Mabai, Gu Shanxue, and company clearly realized the seriousness of the problem. They stared at the river with solemn expressions. Whoosh! The huge wave pushed the wooden boat to the side. If not for Gu Shanxue's control, the wooden boat would have capsized in the river. Li Mabai, Butterfly, and company used their companion beasts to block the river water that fell into the wooden boat, ensuring that the people in the wooden boat wouldn't be drenched by the river water, nor would it pour into the boat. But soon, everyone's eyes were attracted by the scene in front of them. They saw a huge body extend out of the river and stare at them like a god. In front of it, humans and even the wooden boat were as tiny as ants. Although most of its body was still in the river, and they couldn't see its full appearance, just the exposed portion was enough to shock them. It was a dragon, but it wasn't completely a dragon. It had the appearance of a dragon, but its body wasn't made of flesh and blood. It didn't have dragon scales or flesh. It looked like a dragon condensed from coral, dazzling and strange. Zhou had seen many dragons. The white dragon in Old Dragon Cave, the black dragon in the underground sea, the torch dragon in Torch Dragon Hall, and even the western dragon. However, no matter what kind of dragon it was, it couldn't be as strange and beautiful as the dragon in front of him. The color of the coral-like body changed according to its emotions. Sometimes it was snow-white like jade, sometimes scarlet like blood, and sometimes colorful. It was like a huge work of art. Could this be the legendary dragon King Gu? Heavens! There's no dragon corpse in the Dragon Corpse River. There's actually a dragon King Gu. Gu Shanshui widened his eyes as he stared at the gorgeous and terrifying creature in front of him. He cried out involuntarily. Gu Lu and Gu He were even worse off. They collapsed on the boat and even prostrated themselves in worship of the dragon King Gu. A person like Zhou who didn't rear Gu might not understand what the dragon King Gu meant to people who reared them, but Gu Shanshui and company were already so terrified that they lost all fighting spirit. They were like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Legend had it that phoenixes were the nemesis of Gu, while dragons gave birth to all Gu in the world. Legend had it that phoenixes were the nemesis of Gu, and dragons gave birth to all Gu in the world. These disasters were actually caused by Gu worms, and Gu worms were living beings that parasitized the dragon god. They would punish humans who had done wrong on behalf of the dragon god. From the point of view of modern humans, Gu were actually parasites of the dragon god. From the perspective of modern humans, Gu, dragon god, and many Gu. However, in the legends of these regions, if the parasites on the dragon god were extremely powerful, they would turn the tables and turn the entire dragon god into a Gu. Then, they would form the legendary king of all Gu, the dragon King Gu. Of Lu of Tu of Gu. To them all. He of Gu no he no of the of. No he. To he however, the life form in front of him undoubtedly had the characteristics of a dragon and a Gu. It looked like a divine dragon. Its body had a terrifying dragon might, but its body was similar to a coral structure. As for the coral itself, it was formed from many coral worms. The creature in front of him could also be seen as an amalgamation of countless Gu. These characteristics were extremely similar to the legendary dragon King Gu. Furthermore, ever since this creature suspected to be the dragon King Gu appeared, the Gu on Gu Shanshui, Gu Lu, and Gu He had been trembling. They couldn't move at all. It was even more terrifying than the chick's suppression. To people who reared Gu, this was undoubtedly fatal. The chick stood at the bow and chirped at the dragon King Gu. It looked very ferocious, but Zhou, who knew the chick very well, could tell that it was very guilty. Otherwise, with the chick's personality, it would have spat out phoenix flames to burn the creature in front of it. The dragon King Gu stared coldly at the chick, Zhou, and company. It clearly wasn't afraid of the chick like the other Gu. It didn't even treat the chick as a threat. Although the chick had a phoenix bloodline, it hadn't fully matured. It could restrain ordinary Gu, but an existence like the dragon King Gu wasn't something the chick could match. Zhou noticed that the dragon King Gu's gaze was fixed on the calabash containing the corpse bug. Clearly, it had been attracted by the corpse bug. Gu Shanshui raised the calabash with trembling hands and offered it to the dragon King Gu with both hands. As a Gu breeder, no one dared to resist the dragon King Gu because it was a supreme god in his heart. With a flash, Zhou arrived at the bow of the boat and took the calabash from Gu Shanshui's hand. He held it in his hand and looked at the dragon King Gu. As he wasn't a Gu breeder, he didn't fear the Dragon King Gu. Furthermore, even if he handed over the corpse bug in the calabash, the Dragon King Gu might not let them off. Roar. The Dragon King Gu seemed to be angered by Zhou Wen's actions as it let out a strange roar. Unlike the dragon roars Zhou Wen had heard before, the Dragon King Gu's voice was very strange. It had the resonance of a mutated species. Amidst the Dragon King Gu's roar, Gu Shanshui and company revealed looks of pain. They hugged their heads as though worms were biting at their brains. Zhou Wen also felt as though some extremely tiny creature had entered his ears through the sound and was about to invade his brain. This is a sound Gu that uses sound to transmit. Quickly block your ears. Don't listen to that sound. Gu Shanshui endured the pain and shouted. In fact, under the effects of Truth Listener and the Supreme Hell King Life Soul, Zhou Wen had already discovered the sound Gu hidden in the sound. He used the Supreme Hell King Life Soul's control over his body to seal his hearing and exclude the sound Gu. I know you can understand me. Let us leave the Dragon Corpse River. I'll return the corpse bug inside to you. If one of us dies, I'll turn it to dust now, Zhou Wen said to the Dragon King Gu as he raised the calabash in his hand. The Dragon King Gu was enraged as it opened its mouth and spewed out dragon breath at Zhou Wen. The dragon breath was like a tide of clouds, looking extremely terrifying. The chick opened its mouth and spewed out golden flames. When the golden flames came into contact with the dragon breath, although it burned a portion of the dragon breath, it was suppressed by the dragon breath. The dragon breath was about to inundate the wooden boat. Gu Shanshui, Gu Lu, and Gu He's faces were ashen. They didn't dare resist at all. Although Li Ma Bai, Butterfly, and Mute had already tried their best to block the dragon breath, it wasn't very effective. Their expressions turned rather ugly. Chapter 794. Suddenly, the white chick on Zhou Wen's shoulder flapped its wings and flew in front of the dragon breath. It opened its mouth and sucked. The dragon breath that filled the sky was sucked into the white chick's mouth like rivers flowing into the sea. Moments later, there was nothing left. Gu Shanshui, Butterfly, and company looked at the white chick in a daze. They knew how powerful the chick was and guessed that it was a phoenix descendant. However, the white chick that Tai Sui had transformed into didn't appear too eye-catching. Furthermore, it didn't look like it was fire elemental, making it impossible for it to be a phoenix descendant. Furthermore, phoenixes were so rare. Having one was already a huge blessing. It was hard to imagine that a person would have two phoenixes. Furthermore, Tai Sui was usually in a daze and didn't move much. Most of the time, it stood motionless on Zhou Wen's shoulder. They didn't pay much attention to the dazed white chick, believing that it was only an ordinary companion beast at the epic stage. However, who knew that the Tai Sui would amaze everyone with a single move? It actually opened its mouth and swallowed all the dragon breath of the Dragon King Gu as though nothing had happened. It surprised them. Although Tai Sui was powerful, it wasn't truly invincible. The main reason was that the Dragon King Gu's dragon breath was somewhat different from a real dragon breath. The Dragon King Gu's dragon breath was somewhat similar to the corpse worm's corpse fog. They were formed from a large number of microscopic Gu, and Tai Sui was the nemesis of these things. In fact, it wasn't just the dragon breath. Even the Dragon King Gu itself was a complicated microbial amalgamation. To Tai Sui, the Dragon King Gu's body was a feast. Tai Sui flapped its wings and flew towards the Dragon King Gu. The Dragon King Gu clearly didn't know how powerful Tai Sui was. It opened its mouth and swallowed Tai Sui that flew towards it. Everyone was alarmed. They originally imagined that the white chick could fight the Dragon King Gu, but to their surprise, it was swallowed in one gulp. The Dragon King Gu was the king of all Gu. Its body produced all sorts of microbial Gu. Once swallowed, a large number of Gu would invade one's body. Even a mythical creature probably couldn't withstand it. At that moment, Gu Shanshui and company suddenly saw the Dragon King Gu roar at the sky as though it was in extreme pain. Then, they saw a small hole appear in its abdomen. Tai Sui crawled out and pecked at the Dragon King Gu's body. The Dragon King Gu's body was filled with goo. Ignoring eating it, ordinary creatures would be parasitized by the goo just by touching it. Even mythical creatures would probably die tragically. It was unbelievable that the white bird could casually peck at the Dragon King Gu's body. Is that really the Dragon King Gu? It can't be fake, right? Gu Lu's face was full of doubt. How could the legendary king of all Gu, the Dragon King Gu, be casually swallowed by a little white bird? Tai Sui circled around the Dragon King Gu and kept pecking at it, pecking holes in its body. The Dragon King Gu unleashed a terrifying dragon aura and power, but it was useless against Tai Sui. Tai Sui was the nemesis of microorganisms. Even if Tyrant Behemoth fought, it might be parasitized by the goo on the Dragon King Gu's body. Even Torch Dragon found it difficult to withstand the Dragon King Gu's power. After all, the Dragon King Gu was transformed from a goo devouring a true dragon. It had a natural restraining effect on dragons. As for Tai Sui, it happened to be the nemesis of the Dragon King Gu. No matter how powerful the Dragon King Gu was, it could only be pecked at in front of Tai Sui. Gu Shanshui and company watched in a daze as the Dragon King Gu was pecked at by a little white bird. Finally, it escaped into the water and escaped through the bottom of the river. The legendary king of all Gu had actually escaped just like that. Tai Sui's body grew bigger as it couldn't eat anymore. Furthermore, its speed wasn't fast, so it was impossible for it to catch up to the Dragon King Gu underwater. It flew back and landed on Zhou Wen's shoulder. Gu Shanshui and company looked at Tai Sui on Zhou Wen's shoulder in surprise. They originally imagined that a chick with the phoenix bloodline was already a godlike existence. They never expected that this little white bird, whose name couldn't be a phoenix, would be even more terrifying. Even the Dragon King Gu could only be ravaged in front of it. It even fled in such a sorry state. It was unbelievable. Unlike the chick, although Tai Sui looked similar to a chick, it didn't have the aura or abilities of a phoenix. Gu Shanshui and Li Mabai couldn't recognize its origins. Zhou Wen handed the calabash to Gu Shanshui again. Master Gu, let's leave this place first. However, Gu Shanshui didn't reach out to take the calabash. Mr. Zhou, if it weren't for you, we would have lost our lives. How would we have the face to ask for this corpse bug? It's best you stay. Zhou Wen smiled and said, I don't know how to tame Gu. What's the point of keeping it? Master Gu, if you feel bad, teach me a few Gu nurturing techniques when we return. Mr. Zhou, it's my honor that you are willing to learn how to nurture Gu from me. I will definitely teach you everything I know without holding anything back, Gu Shanshui said seriously. Let's talk when we get back. This isn't a place to talk, Zhou Wen said as he handed the calabash to Gu Shanshui. Gu Shanshui didn't decline. After putting away the calabash, he put it away carefully before steering the boat towards the exit of Dragon Corpse River. Zhou Wen looked in the direction where the Dragon King Gu had vanished with a strange look in his eyes. If not for Tai Sui, it wouldn't have been easy to defeat the Dragon King Gu even with a mythical companion beast. Furthermore, it was very likely that they would have been parasitized by the Gu before they even fought. However, even Tai Sui could only injure the Dragon King Gu. Its body and the energy contained in it were too immense. Even Tai Sui couldn't digest them all. What concerned Zhou Wen was that the primordial spore he had placed in the river had taken the opportunity to burrow into the Dragon King Gu's body, as though it wanted to parasitize the Dragon King Gu. However, Zhou Wen could sense that the primordial spore hadn't succeeded for the time being. Now, it had been taken far away by the Dragon King Gu. Due to the distance, Zhou Wen could only sense that the primordial spore was still alive. However, the connection between them had become very weak. He didn't know how the primordial spore was doing in the Dragon King Gu's body. If I can successfully parasitize the Dragon King Gu and use it as my own, the Gu in the South District won't be terrifying, Zhouwen thought. Zhouwen wasn't too worried about the safety of the primordial spore. It had an eternal indestructible life providence, so it wasn't easy to kill it. However, it would take a long time to parasitize a mythical creature. Zhouwen couldn't wait for it in Dragon Corpse River, so he had to leave first. Without the threat of the Dragon King Gu, the other Gu were afraid of the chick and didn't dare rush over. The group successfully left Dragon Corpse River. Outside Dragon Corpse River, Zhouwen could sense the existence of the primordial spore. Although the connection was very weak, it was enough to determine the primordial spore's fate and location. Zhouwen didn't see the tiny palm symbol along the way and couldn't help but find it a pity. The Dragon Corpse River had no fewer Gu than the Valley of No Return. If he could download it as a game dungeon, it would be a good place to grind. Unfortunately, he didn't find the tiny palm symbol. Chapter 795. After returning to Chiang Rai, he didn't see Li Xian and Worm Dugu return. It was likely that the two of them had yet to return from the Ice Silkworm Gu King. Gu Shanshui wanted to think of a way to get a container to rear the corpse bug, so he returned to Mong Sat overnight. Zhouwen didn't go to Mong Sat with Gu Shanshui. He decided to head there in a few days to retrieve the calabash. The reason he chose to stay was because he wanted to go to the Xiao family to take a look and figure out the matter between Xiao Si and Wang Chanli Mabai planned on staying in Chiang Rai for a few more days before heading to Mong Sat with Zhouwen. At night, Zhouwen used the invisibility cloak and headed for the Xiao family. He planned on infiltrating the Xiao family to see if he could find out anything. The Xiao family lived in an exotic manner. Before arriving at the manor, Zhouwen discovered a problem. There were many Gu lurking in the grass on both sides of the road. If it wasn't for Zhouwen's Supreme Hell King Life Soul and Truth Listener's ability, which allowed his senses to reach an extremely high level, it would have been very difficult for ordinary people to discover the Gu. Xiao clan is really careful, they even placed Gu worms outside the manor. Zhouwen didn't know much about Gu. He didn't know which Gu relied on smell to distinguish enemies, and which Gu relied on sound to distinguish enemies. Therefore, he flew into the manor from the sky to avoid alarming the Gu. However, after entering the manor, Zhouwen realized that although the manor's layout was very tight, this was only the periphery of the Xiao family. Behind the manor was a valley. It was a dimensional zone. The true core of the Xiao family was built in a dimensional zone. Using Truth Listener's ability to constantly scan, he found all the hidden mechanisms and arrangements of the Xiao family. The entrance of the dimensional zone was guarded by the Xiao family's guards, but that was secondary. It was impossible for 4 legendary humans to see through Zhou Wen's invisibility. What caught Zhou Wen's attention was that there was a statue placed at the entrance of the dimensional zone. The statue looked sinister. It was a Buddha statue, but it was different from the Buddha statues he had seen in Dragon Gate Grotto. Not only did it look ferocious and terrifying, but it also had a vertical eye at its glabella. It held a strange fork in its hand. In any case, Zhouwen had never seen such a Buddha statue before. However, his sculpting technique was in the style of Buddhism. There was a Buddhistic glow carved on his back. Zhouwen could vaguely sense an aura similar to Kumen Thong from the Buddha statue. The visual system of a spirit body is somewhat different from that of a human. It's not just based on body shape. I reckon that ordinary invisibility would not be able to fool that Buddha statue. Zhouwen directly activated the Wheel of Destiny of the invisibility cloak and completely concealed his body before entering the dimensional zone. The guards and Buddha statues didn't discover him as he successfully entered the valley. The moment he entered the valley, he found it difficult to breathe as though there was no oxygen in the valley. Zhouwen didn't discover any Gu and immediately knew that it was the taboo power of this dimensional zone. All he could do was switch to the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder. Indeed, he no longer felt suffocated. Although he didn't have Supreme Hell King's sharp senses, it was the same with Truth Listener. Zhouwen used Truth Listener to scan the entire valley before quickly moving in. As the invisibility cloak's Wheel of Destiny only had a 3-minute time limit, he had to figure out the situation in the dimensional zone in these 3 minutes. Zhouwen originally imagined that there would be all sorts of goo in such a valley, but there weren't. There was only one temple in the valley, but the style was very different from the temples in Luoyang. It was obvious that it was the local style of Chiang Rai. He couldn't see a single person outside the temple, but he saw quite a number of people inside. They were likely disciples of the Shao family. Some were practicing their techniques, while others were commanding goo. It was rather lively. When Zhouwen entered the temple's yard, he felt no reaction from the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder. He knew that there was no taboo power here. As he trusted the guards of the manor outside and the taboo power in the valley, the defenses inside the temple weren't that tight. Zhouwen looked around the temple and realized that the deities consecrated in the temple hall weren't the Buddhist mighty figures that Zhouwen was familiar with. Instead, they were dolls that looked different. The ones consecrated here are all Kumin Thong and Kumin Ne? Zhouwen scanned the area and saw many dolls in the shape of men and women. He roughly knew what they were. Zhouwen wasn't interested in these things as he rushed to the backyard. He didn't have much time left. Although he wasn't afraid of being exposed, it would be impossible for him to eavesdrop on them if he was exposed. The temple was rather large, and there were many courtyards inside. Each courtyard consecrated a different Kumin Thong, making them look eerie and terrifying. Zhouwen had always felt that these religious buildings weren't aesthetically pleasing. No matter what kind of religious building it was, it gave him an uneasy feeling. Along the way, although he encountered quite a number of people from the Shao family, they didn't say anything that interested Zhouwen. Seeing that the 3-minute time limit was up, Zhouwen realized that there was no one in a nearby courtyard, so he entered it first. After entering the yard, the 3-minute invisibility ended. Zhouwen was wearing the invisibility cloak, so he could only achieve the effect of invisibility. His body didn't vanish. Thankfully, there wasn't anyone here. The courtyard wasn't big, and there was only a temple hall inside. The door was open, and strangely, there was a black cloth hanging in front of the door. Zhouwen used Truth Listener to scan the interior and realized that the interior of the tiny temple hall was eerie and terrifying. The decorations inside were very simple. There was a wooden table with a Kumin Thong. The Kumin Thong's body was like jade. It was curled into a ball, and there was a crystal container outside. The yellow liquid inside the container enveloped the Kumin Thong. Now, Zhouwen roughly knew that it was corpse oil. Seeing that there was nothing inside, Zhouwen didn't enter. He turned around and was about to continue searching the temple when he suddenly saw a girl standing in front of him at some point in time. The girl didn't look very old, at most 18 or 19 years old. She wore strange clothes and looked rather delicate, but for some reason, there was a sinister feeling about her. At that moment, she was staring coldly at Zhouwen. Zhouwen felt his hair stand on end when he was stared at by the girl. Did she see me? Zhouwen was thinking about how to deal with such a situation. The other party was only a girl who had no grudges with him. If Zhouwen were to draw his saber and kill her, he wouldn't be able to do it. However, the girl was also very strange. She only stared coldly at Zhouwen without shouting or screaming. Could it be that she didn't see me? Zhouwen suspected as he tried taking 2 steps to the left. The girl's pupils shifted to the left with his movements. When Zhouwen took a few steps to the right, the girl's pupils shifted to the right again. She kept staring at him, clearly able to see the invisible Zhouwen. Chapter 796. The girl kept looking at Zhouwen, but she didn't shout or scream. Nor did she look flustered. This placed Zhouwen in a difficult position. If the girl had acted hostile or screamed, he would have long taken action to take her down. However, with her looking at him without screaming or making a fuss, Zhouwen couldn't take action directly. There are so many people in the Shao family. The girl might not recognize all of them. Is it possible that she doesn't know that I'm not from the Xiao family? After some thought, Zhou felt that it was very possible. Otherwise, there was no reason for the girl to not call out to him. If it were someone else who was eloquent, he might have been able to fool the girl. He might even be able to get some information out of her. Unfortunately, Zhou wasn't eloquent, so he only smiled at the girl in a friendly manner. He pretended that he was just taking a stroll and wanted to leave the yard. Zhou took a few steps to the side, hoping to circle around the girl. However, the girl took 2 steps to the side and blocked his path. Clearly, she wasn't willing to let him go. Ahem, sorry. I came to the wrong place. Sorry to disturb you, Zhou said as he took a few steps to the side, hoping to circle around the girl. However, the girl blocked his path again. However, she had no intention of attacking. She didn't look like she had any intention of shouting. Why are you blocking my way? Is there anything I can help you with? Zhou planned on trying to convince the girl with his poor eloquence. The girl remained silent as she continued looking at him, sizing him up. Are all the people from the Xiao family so strange? Zhou felt that the girl was somewhat odd. Ignoring the fact that her actions were incomprehensible, Zhou hadn't seen her when he first entered the yard. With Truth Listener's ability, it was impossible for Zhou not to sense someone in the yard. However, when the girl stood behind him, Zhou really didn't discover where she had come from. Could it be that this girl isn't human but a ghost? Zhou carefully sized up the girl, but he didn't discover anything wrong with her. She looked like a normal human girl. The girl remained silent. Zhou was about to say something when he realized that someone was walking towards the yard. Zhou looked into the yard. Apart from the temple hall, there was nothing else to hide. After glancing at the girl, Zhou gestured for her to keep quiet before entering the temple hall. The girl could see him, but it didn't mean that others could. He planned on hiding and giving it a try. Since he had already been exposed, the situation couldn't get any worse. There was an offering table in the temple hall without any other decorations. Just as Zhou was wondering where he could hide, he saw the girl walk in. With the girl following Zhou, even if others couldn't see the invisible Zhou, they would discover his existence because of the girl. Just as Zhou was about to take action and put the girl down, he saw her point at a cloth curtain in the corner of the temple hall. She seemed to be hinting for Zhou to hide behind it. The two of them had already walked to the entrance of the yard. Zhou didn't dare speak again, afraid that they would hear him. All he could do was look at the girl and point at himself before pointing at the curtain. The girl seemed to understand his meaning and nodded. Zhou couldn't care less as he tiptoed to the back of the curtain. Just as Zhou steadied himself, he heard the door to the yard open. The two people had already walked in and quickly entered the temple hall. Zhou wasn't afraid of being discovered. At most, he could storm out if he was discovered. However, he wouldn't be able to obtain any information. The two of them walked into the house and didn't pay attention to the back of the curtain. Clearly, they didn't expect someone to be hiding here. Furthermore, Zhou was invisible. It was difficult to discover him with the naked eye. However, what puzzled Zhou was that not only did they not discover him, they also ignored the girl beside him as though they didn't see her. The two people who entered the temple hall didn't look young. They were probably at least 50 years old. After entering the temple hall, one of the men placed something on the offering table. It was a small metal furnace with many tiny holes on it. Wisps of smoke emitted from the holes. The smoke didn't rise vertically. As though it was attracted by some force, it floated towards the cumin thong on the offering table. The man bowed at the cumin thong on the offering table before getting up and walking to the side. "Sixth brother, have you investigated Er's matter?" the man who put down the cigarettes asked. According to the intelligence from the Imperial Capital's spies, Little C went to the Great Wall with Wang Chan. There should be another person who went with them. This person has a very good relationship with Wang Chan. We haven't found out who it is yet, Xiao Liuqi answered. In your opinion, could it be that the Wang family discovered our goal and deliberately eliminated Si-er? Xiao Tianfang said with a frown. From the looks of it, it shouldn't be. If the Wang family really discovered our goal, they definitely wouldn't only attack little Si. It's also impossible for them to explain Xiao Si's matter to us. They might even fall out with our Xiao family. But from the looks of it, there aren't any signs of this, Xiao Liuqi said. Xiao Tianfang sighed and said, the Wang family is a family from the East District after all. Even if they are stronger than our Xiao family, it won't be easy for them to come to the South District to touch our Xiao family. I'm not afraid of them falling out with us. Unfortunately, with Si-er's death, our plan probably won't have a chance. Brother, is there nothing else that can replace Wang Chan's life providence? Xiao Liuqi asked. If there was, we wouldn't have taken such a huge risk to target the Wang family, Xiao Tianfang explained. Xiao Tianfang explained, we've studied Gu Lady Kamene for so many years. Although she has successfully advanced to the mythical stage, she's ultimately unable to control it freely. In recent years, her control has become weaker and weaker, much less refine her into her own life soul. Now that she's already at the mythical stage, it's impossible to refine her into a life soul. However, using Wang Chan's goddess of misfortune life providence, we can create a misfortune Kamene. We can let her and Gu Lady Kamene suppress and influence each other. This way we can take the opportunity to grasp them firmly in our hands, Xiao Tianfang said. Can we use a heaven child to replace the misfortune Kamene? Xiao Liuqi asked. It's not that simple. Gu Lady Kamene is the reincarnation of the Gu god. We forcefully refined her into a Kamene before she was born. Although she's not a true god, she's not something ordinary Kumanthongs can compare to. Only some especially powerful Kumanthongs can affect her. Currently, the best chance we have is to refine Wang Chan into a misfortune Kamene. The other methods are even more difficult and hopeless, Xiao Tianfang said. Chapter 797. When Zhouwen heard their conversation, how could he not understand? The Dugu family's guess was right. Back then, it wasn't Gu that killed and dug out the infant. It was done by the Xiao family. They refined the infant into a Kamene and advanced it to the mythical stage. Zhouwen's understanding of Kamene was very limited. He didn't know how Kamene grew up, but the Xiao family had probably tried their best. Now that they couldn't control Kamene, they wanted to use Wang Chan to refine another Kamene to restrain Gu Lady Kamene. What a vicious Xiao family. In such an era, it's not wrong to want to become stronger. It's not wrong to use all sorts of means, but to be so vicious, one has to be prepared to be treated the same. Zhouwen's killing intent rose. Zhouwen wanted to summon the light concealment sword and kill Xiao Liuqi and Xiao Tianfang first. The two of them definitely wouldn't be wronged. As for the other Xiao family members, he would decide based on the situation. Just as he was about to take action, he suddenly realized that the girl was standing in front of him as though she wanted to stop him from attacking Xiao Liuqi and Xiao Tianfang. Zhouwen looked at the girl in front of him and suddenly understood something. He thought to himself, could this girl be the Gu lady that they refined into a Kamene? The more Zhouwen thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible. The one consecrated in the temple hall was likely Gu Lady Kamene. Then, this strange girl was very likely what Gu Lady would look like when she grew up. Typically, Kamene wouldn't grow up, but after Kamene and Essence Energy Arts combined, anything was possible. She's now under the Xiao family's control. If I kill someone from the Xiao family, she will definitely become my enemy. With this in mind, Zhouwen didn't take action for the time being. Gu Lady was a pitiful person. If she wasn't born magical, she wouldn't have been harmed by the Xiao family. Even her parents died tragically. She was refined into a Kamene before she was even born. It could be said to be extremely tragic. Zhouwen wasn't sure if she could survive if he killed her master, so he planned on not taking action. Xiao Tianfang thought for a moment and continued, regardless of whether the Wang family senses it or not, let's put Wang Chan's matter aside for now. Let's try our best to capture the Ice Silkworm Gu King. If we have the Ice Silkworm Gu King, we won't have to rely too much on Gu Lady's strength. The Ice Silkworm Gu isn't easy to capture. I originally thought that with Gu Lady's help, we would be able to capture it. I knew that there wasn't one Ice Silkworm King, but a pair. Gu Lady isn't a match for the pair. I need to think of another way. How's the taming of that mythical blood scorpion Gu? Can it be used? Xiao Tianfang asked after some thought. Xiao Liuqi said with a bitter smile, I don't know why, but the mythical Gu that we used Gu Lady to capture are especially difficult to tame. The three from before refused to submit after being tamed for so long. This one is slightly better, but I can barely control it. I can't control it as I wish. That's enough. Bring it along and use it to distract the Ice Silkworm Gu King. As long as the pair of Ice Silkworm Gu Kings are separated, Gu Lady should be more than enough to deal with one. Xiao Tianfang looked at the kumen on the offering table and continued, prepare the blood scorpion Gu. We'll go tomorrow to prevent any accidents. Worm Dugu is also eyeing the pair of ice silkworms. We can't let him succeed first. I understand. I'll prepare it now, Xiao Liuqi replied. Do a good job. In the future, you will take over the position of family head. However, as family head, you first have to have strength that convinces others. If you can successfully capture the pair of Ice Silkworm Gu Kings this time, you will be able to tame and control one of them, Xiao Tianzong said. Brother, you are in your prime. Xiao Liuqi was immediately overjoyed, but he didn't dare show it. Xiao Tianfang waved his hand. I know my own matters. All these years, in order to suppress and control Gu Lady, my body has been deteriorating day by day. My mind is failing as well. In the future, the Xiao family will still have to rely on you. You should bear the responsibility. Brother, don't worry. I definitely won't let you down, Xiao Liuqi hurriedly said. Alright, go prepare first. I hope the capture of the Ice Silkworm Gu King will go smoothly. Xiao Tianfang gestured for Xiao Liuqi to send him out. After Xiao Liuqi left, Xiao Tianfang stood in front of the kumen alone. He reached out to touch the crystal barrier outside and said with a strange expression, It's been so many years, but I still haven't been able to completely tame you. Now that the plan to snatch Wang Chan's misfortune kumen has failed, if you still don't submit, I can only take the final step. My body really can't take it anymore. After I obtain the Ice Silkworm Gu King, I'll completely wipe away your consciousness. Although that will greatly reduce the kumen spirituality and abilities, you have forced me into a corner. This is the only step I can take. Xiao Tianfang stood there and looked at the kumen for a while before leaving the courtyard. From beginning to end, the girl stood in front of Zhouwen, preventing him from harming Xiao Tianfang. Why are you still protecting him after he caused you such harm? Zhouwen asked. The girl remained silent, but Zhouwen seemed to think of a reason and asked, Is it because he's your master? If he dies, you will also be hurt? The girl unexpectedly nodded as though she was confirming Zhouwen's words. Zhouwen was overjoyed when he saw the girl finally react. He asked, Is there a way to prevent you from being hurt? The girl only looked at him without answering. Zhouwen snapped to his senses and knew that the girl couldn't speak. Therefore, he pointed at the kumen on the offering table and said, If he transfers this to me, will you not be hurt after he dies? This time, the girl had a reaction and nodded again. Alright, I know what to do. Wait for me for a few days. I'll soon save you, Zhouwen said to the girl before turning to walk out of the temple hall. The girl seemed to understand what he meant and didn't stop him this time. After Zhouwen left the courtyard, he temporarily left the Xiao family. Gu Lady was very magical. Zhouwen didn't want to see her die with Xiao Tianfang. He planned on getting Gu Lady over first before settling the score with the Xiao family for Wang Chan. After Zhou Wen left the Xiao family, he returned to his residence and called Gu Shanshui. Thankfully, he had already arrived in Mongsat and his phone had a signal. He quickly picked up the call. Zhou Wen asked some questions about Kuminthong and Kuminei and confirmed that his plan was feasible. At night, Worm Dugu and Li Xian returned together. The situation didn't look good, and Worm Dugu's expression was especially ugly. Li Xian didn't say anything today. Zhou Wen knew that Worm Dugu's failure was definitely tragic, so Li Xian didn't say anything. Chapter 798. Why don't we forget our bet? It was just a joke, Li Xian said to Worm Dugu. What joke? I, Worm Dugu, am a man of my word. If I can't catch the ice silkworm Gu King for you, I'll be your disciple, Worm Dugu said with a glare. Li Xian smiled and said, I've seen your abilities. If there's only one ice silkworm Gu King, you will definitely be able to catch it. However, there are two now. This is unexpected. Even if we fight to a draw, no one will lose or win. Isn't that fair? No, a man's promise is worth its weight in gold. If I can't catch the ice silkworm, I'll acknowledge you as my master. I won't go back on my word. With that said, Worm Dugu turned to look at Zhou Wen and said, If Li Xian is my master, Zhou Wen, you are my uncle master. It's not too much for an uncle master to teach me a little, right? Zhou Wen looked at Worm Dugu in disbelief. This fellow was actually from one of the 6 hero families, the Dugu family that dominated the South District. This was way too shameless. Alright, did you have this idea from the beginning? Li Xian was also taken aback when he heard that. Only then did he realize that he had been fooled. Worm Dugu chuckled and said, My principle is practicality. So what if I acknowledge you as my master? You still need me to teach you how to rear Gu. In name, you are my master, but in reality, I'm still your master. It's just a title. It doesn't matter. If Zhou Wen can teach me how to rear a phoenix, I'll even call him master, much less uncle master. Zhou Wen and Li Xian were dumbfounded. This was the first time they had seen someone like Worm Dugu. It was an eye-opener. I really don't know how to rear a phoenix. This silly bird insisted on following me. I usually don't care much about it. It eats whatever I have. I can't teach you, Zhou Wen said. However, Worm Dugu immediately shook his head and said, No. I've long read about the habits and eating habits of a phoenix in ancient books. If I had a phoenix divine bird, I would know how to rear it myself. I don't need you to teach me. Then why are you learning from me? Don't tell me you want me to help you find another phoenix? I don't have that ability, Zhou Wen said in puzzlement. I know what to fear, but I don't have a phoenix. I just want to learn from you how to make a phoenix willingly follow me, Worm Dugu said. I already said that this silly bird is naturally willing to follow me. There's no trick to it. Perhaps its character is better, Zhou Wen said. Old Zhou is right. Back when the 3 of us encountered the chick, only old Zhou was chosen, Li Xian added. Everything in this world is caused by cause and effect. It is impossible for there to be no cause. If there is no cause, then it could only mean that you all have yet to discover the cause. Perhaps the primordial energy art you cultivate in is rather special, or perhaps you have a hidden special physique, or perhaps something on you has attracted it. In short, there must be a reason. That's what I need to know. Worm Dugu didn't say a few words seriously before he said to Zhou Wen with a cheeky smile, Anyway, there's a high chance that I won't be able to catch the ice silkworm this time. In the future, you will be my uncle master Zhou. If you want to teach, teach. If you don't, let me follow you and learn by myself. Zhou Wen didn't wish to speak to Worm Dugu anymore. He turned to Li Xian and said, I'll help you capture the ice silkworm Gu King tomorrow. However, after capturing it, you have to lend it to me for 2 days. Lend? How? Worm Dugu curled his lips and said, Gu can't be changed once it recognizes its owner. How are you going to return it after borrowing it? I don't want the ice silkworm Goo King to recognize me as its owner. I just need to borrow it to do something. I'll return it to you after I'm done, Zhou said. Of course not. You can even take it directly, much less borrow it, Li Xian said with a smile. Worm Dugu was a little displeased when he heard that. If you want to use the phoenix myth to capture the ice silkworm Goo King, I advise you not to go. Although the phoenix divine bird is powerful, it's still a young one. The ice silkworm Goo King won't be afraid of it. If you make a mistake, you might end up killing the phoenix divine bird. That would really be a huge loss. Let's go to the place tomorrow and take a look. Zhou also knew that the ice silkworm Goo King was definitely not easy to capture. However, the Xiao family was going to capture the ice silkworm Goo King tomorrow. He wanted this opportunity. He wanted to snatch the ice silkworm Goo King from the Xiao family and use it to exchange for Goo Lady. As long as Xiao Tianfang wasn't a fool, he would definitely exchange 2 ice silkworm Goo Kings for a Kumine that might take Xiao Tianfang's life. After all, he had already planned on wiping Goo Lady's spiritual consciousness. When that happened, Goo Lady Kumine's abilities would be greatly reduced. She would probably be inferior to an ice silkworm. In comparison, anyone would know how to choose. Alright, I'll see how you capture the ice silkworm Goo King tomorrow. If you can capture it, I, Worm Dugu, will immediately acknowledge you as my master, Worm Dugu said. Clearly, he didn't think highly of Zhou. Come on. There's no sense of accomplishment at all being your master, Li Xian said. You can't say that. You might not have a sense of accomplishment now, but if you were to walk in the South District and encounter someone from the Dugu family, saying that they are my master, how awe-inspiring would that be? You wouldn't feel a sense of accomplishment, Worm Dugu said with a smile. Zhou and Li Xian looked at him in disdain. With his personality, it was unknown how many masters and uncle masters he had acknowledged outside. It would be strange if the Dugu family was willing to acknowledge him. Before dawn the next day, Zhou woke Li Xian and Worm Dugu up and got them to head to where the ice silkworm Goo King was. He had previously heard Xiao Tianfang and Xiao Liuqi's conversation and knew that the Xiao family was going at this time. If they were late, the Xiao family might have already succeeded. It wasn't good to go early either. Before the Xiao family arrived, they would take away the ice silkworm Goo King. That way, the Xiao family wouldn't know that the ice silkworm Goo King was in Zhou hands. Although Worm Dugu was somewhat puzzled and didn't know why Zhou had to go so early, he still brought the 2 of them to Yianwind Ridge. When they arrived, they realized that someone was already fighting the ice silkworm Goo King. The 2 people in the lead were Xiao Liuqi and Xiao Tianfang. In front of Xiao Tianfang, there was an ice-blue silkworm the size of a rugby ball crawling on the ground. Wherever the silkworm crawled, the ground was immediately covered in frost. It was obvious how low its temperature was. It's no wonder Worm Dugu said that the chick probably can't restrain the ice silkworm. With such ice elemental powers, the chick's phoenix flames will definitely be much less effective against it, Zhou thought. Xiao Liuqi discovered Zhou and company. When he saw Worm Dugu, his expression changed slightly. Clearly, he was afraid that Worm Dugu would snatch the ice silkworm Goo King. Chapter 799. Strange, why is there only one ice silkworm? Where's the other ice silkworm? Worm Dugu said with a frown. Could it be that the people from the Xiao family lured the 2 ice silkworms away? Li Xian said. Worm Dugu shook his head and said, These 2 ice silkworms are a pair. They have a telepathic ability. It's not that easy to separate them. If they could be separated, I would have lured them away long ago. Would the Xiao family even have a chance? Maybe they have the ability, but you don't. Just because you can't lure them away doesn't mean they can't, Li Shua said deliberately. Surprisingly, Worm Dugu wasn't angry this time. After some thought, he said, That's very possible. Li Xian looked at Worm Dugu in surprise. Every time he mentioned Gu, Worm Dugu would have a proud attitude as though he was number one in the world. It was unbelievable that he would admit that he was inferior to the Shao family. You don't have to look at me like that. Have you forgotten what I told you? If the Shao family's mythical Kumanthong is really refined from the Gu god's reincarnation, it's not surprising that it can lure the ice silkworm away, Worm Dugu said. Zhou knew that Worm Dugu was right. Gu lady had lured the ice silkworm away. Shao Tianfang held the Kuman Nei in the temple hall, but Gu lady was nowhere to be seen. She must have lured the other ice silkworm away. This ice silkworm was trapped here by the Shao family and was currently fighting with a blood-colored scorpion. The blood scorpion was clearly no match for the ice silkworm. Its body was almost frozen by the ice mist spewed out by the ice silkworm. It was all thanks to the Shao family's various Gu and companion beasts that the blood scorpion could barely hold back the ice silkworm. As a result, the Shao family had sacrificed a large number of Gu and companion beasts. Furthermore, the Shao family was still using Kumanthong to augment the blood scorpion. This was only enough to hold back the ice silkworm. The ice silkworm's ice aura was extremely powerful. Zhou had seen some ice elemental companion beasts, but this was the first time he had seen one as powerful as the ice silkworm. As long as they came into contact with its icy aura, be it Gu worms or Kumanthong, their bodies would gradually freeze. Moreover, the ice aura seemed to have the characteristic of spreading. As long as one came into contact with a little bit, the body would become colder and colder. Many Gu worms only came into contact with a little bit of the ice aura. At first, it was not a big problem, but after a while they were frozen into ice cubes, and finally their bodies were frozen to pieces. Should we make a move? Now that the two ice silkworms have been separated, it's a great opportunity, Li Xian asked Worm Dugu. There's no rush. Let's wait and see. They aren't a match for the ice silkworm. Worm Dugu paused for a moment before saying, After all, our Dugu family is the king of the South District. We can't be too ugly. Otherwise, I'll be nagged at by those fellows at home. It'll be a headache. The Shao family couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief when they saw that Worm Dugu and company were only a distance away without any intention of advancing. Brother, do you think Worm Dugu will snatch our ice silkworm? Shao Liuqi whispered to Shao Tianfang. Shao Tianfang said with a solemn expression, The Dugu family controls the southern district, and they do things fairly on the surface. But I still have to be prepared. I hope the Gu poison lady can quickly capture the other ice silkworm. How's the situation with Gu lady? Shao Liuqi asked. It's very vague. I only know that they're fighting, Shao Tianfang said. Brother, your perception of Gu lady is getting weaker and weaker. Will there be a problem? Shao Liuqi asked worriedly. As long as her main body is in my hands, she won't have the ability to resist me. If I want her to die, she can only die, Shao Tianfang said coldly. Shao Liuqi sighed and said, Gu lady is just too special. We've been providing for her for so many years, but we can't even see her spirit body. We even implicated you, brother, to suffer the power of the Kuman Nei's backlash. If we could really take her in as our own, our Shao family wouldn't be limited to a corner of Chiang Rai. As long as we can capture this pair of ice silkworms and domesticate them, our Shao family will still be able to soar, Shao Tianfang said. Shao Liuqi nodded and said, Thankfully, there are detailed records of the ice silkworm Gu King in the Gu nurturing art I obtained from the couple. Otherwise, even with Gu lady's help, it would be very difficult for us to separate the two ice silkworms. Shao Tianfang's expression turned cold. Didn't I tell you not to mention this again? Shao Liuqi hurriedly said, Sorry, brother. I misspoke. Zhou was very far away from Shao Tianfang and company, but Truth Listener's ability allowed him to hear their conversation clearly. Let's find Gu lady and the other ice silkworm first. Zhou used Truth Listener to conduct a large-scale search. Soon, he discovered an ice silkworm in a distant swamp, but he didn't find Goo Lady. "Stay here and keep an eye on that ice silkworm. I'll find the other ice silkworm," Zhou said to Li Xian before quietly retreating. Soon, the Xiao family realized that one person was missing from Worm Dugu's side. However, Worm Dugu was still around. It was only a youth missing, so they weren't too worried. After all, even Worm Dugu couldn't capture the ice silkworm. Even if a youth was from the Dugu family, it was impossible for him to capture the ice silkworm alone. Furthermore, there were some traps set up there. If anyone approached, Xiao Tianfang and company would know. After Zhou left, he put on the invisibility cloak and quickly approached the other ice silkworm. In an area relatively close to the ice silkworm, he discovered some goo set up in the swamp. Zhou flew over without alarming the goo. When he arrived at the ice silkworm, he saw an icy blue ice silkworm. This ice silkworm was slightly larger than the previous one. Strangely, Zhou didn't discover Goo Lady with Truth Listener, but when he looked with his eyes, he realized that she was facing the ice silkworm. This is really strange. Truth Listener's ability can't discover Goo Lady. Even Xiao Tianfang, who's Goo Lady's owner, can't see her. Why can I see her? Zhou was somewhat puzzled. If he used the Supreme Hell King Life Soul, it wouldn't be strange for him to see a spirit body. However, Zhou didn't use the Supreme Hell King Life Soul. He didn't even use any special powers to see Goo Lady, who others couldn't. This left him very puzzled. It was a little different from what Zhou had imagined. Xiao Tianfang said that Goo Lady was fighting the ice silkworm, but the scene he saw was completely different. The Goo Lady squatted on the ground and used her fingers to tease the ice silkworm. The terrifying ice silkworm was like a pet dog. It was being teased by the Goo Lady, but it had no intention of attacking the Goo Lady. Zhou watched as the ice silkworm rolled on the ground from Goo Lady's teasing and thought to himself, such a terrifying ice silkworm is actually being played with by Goo Lady. It's really terrifying. Thankfully, the Xiao family can't really control Goo Lady. Otherwise, with her abilities, the Xiao family's strength would have long exceeded this. Upon seeing Zhou come over, Goo Lady stood up and looked at him. The invisibility ability was clearly useless against her. "I just want to play games in peace. I just want to play games in peace." Chapter 800. I need this ice silkworm Goo King to exchange for your freedom, Zhou said as he pointed at the ice silkworm on the ground. Goo Lady nodded before tapping the ice silkworm with her finger. The ferocious and domineering ice silkworm obediently crawled towards Zhou and stopped by his feet. However, it had no intention of attacking him. From the looks of it, the Xiao family has really underestimated Goo Lady's strength. If they knew that Goo Lady can easily make a top-notch goo like the ice silkworm obey her orders, I wonder what expression they would have. Zhou took out the essence gold pot that Worm Dugu had prepared and placed it on the ground. The ice silkworm jumped in like a pet being reared by someone. Zhou's heart stirred as he looked at Goo Lady and asked, "Can you secretly control the other ice silkworm goo and make it look like I've captured it?" Goo Lady nodded again. From the looks of it, she could do it. "Then control that ice silkworm goo later and get it to pretend that I've captured it." Zhou told Goo Lady his plan. After confirming that she could understand, Zhou took the ice silkworm in the essence gold pot and sneaked back to where Li Xian and company were. Oh no, Goo Lady actually failed. Someone snatched the ice silkworm. Xiao Tianfang's expression suddenly changed. How is this possible? Who can snatch the ice silkworm in front of Goo Lady without anyone noticing? Xiao Liuqi jumped in fright as he said in disbelief. I don't know. The goo we set up didn't react at all. Goo Lady didn't discover any traces of him either. Xiao Tianfang's expression was ugly as he continued, I've already summoned Goo Lady back. Now we can only do our best to capture this ice silkworm. Just as Xiao Tianfang said that, he saw Zhou, who had left previously, return to Worm Dugu's side. He said a few words to Worm Dugu before walking towards the ice silkworm. Could it be that he snatched the other ice silkworm? Xiao Tianfang's heart skipped a beat. However, Xiao Liuqi had already led his men to block Zhou Wen, preventing him from approaching the battlefield. At the same time, he shouted at Worm Dugu, "Old Master Dugu, we are capturing this ice silkworm. It's not appropriate for you to interfere, right?" Worm Dugu said with a smile, "I'm still here." He didn't even move. When did he intervene in your affairs? The Dugu family has always been open and aboveboard. Old Master Dugu, don't tell me that this friend isn't from your Dugu family? Xiao Liuqi said as he pointed at Zhou Wen. I really wish that he was a member of our Dugu family. Unfortunately, he isn't. Without waiting for Xiao Liuqi to say anything, Worm Dugu continued, however, you can't say that he has nothing to do with our Dugu family. Although he's not a member of our Dugu family, he's my uncle master. Xiao Liuqi, Xiao Tianfang, and company were alarmed. Although Worm Dugu wasn't someone with real power in the Dugu family, his seniority was rather high. Furthermore, he was very famous for raising gu. He was a famous master in the South District. It was unbelievable that Worm Dugu actually said that the youth in front of him was his uncle master. However, a figure like Worm Dugu clearly wouldn't joke about such matters. Could it be that this person has already cultivated to the point of regaining his youth? He looks young, but is actually an old monster? Xiao Tianfang thought to himself. Since he's your uncle master, don't you think it's appropriate for him to do this? Xiao Liuqi said. Worm Dugu continued smiling and said, It's useless for you to say that to me. Only an uncle master can discipline his disciple. When have you ever seen a disciple discipline an uncle master? Sir. Xiao Liuqi looked at Zhou Wen and was about to say something when he suddenly saw Zhou Wen extend his hand and grab. A blood-red vortex appeared on his palm and sucked in the ice silkworm that was fighting the blood scorpion. The majestic ice silkworm couldn't withstand the suction force of the blood-colored vortex and was sucked into the essence gold pot by Zhou Wen. How is this possible? It wasn't just the Xiao family. Even Worm Dugu widened his eyes as though he had seen a ghost. Although he had imagined that Zhou Wen might subdue the ice silkworm, he never expected it to be in such a manner. Worm Dugu originally imagined that Zhou Wen would use the chick's restraining effect before using various means and mythical companion beasts to fight the ice silkworm and finally subdue it. However, to his surprise, Zhou Wen extended his hand and sucked the ice silkworm into the essence gold pot. It was as though he wasn't collecting a gu king but an ordinary worm. The Xiao family's eyes nearly popped out. They had fought the ice silkworm for so long, so they naturally knew how terrifying it was. Up to now, they had lost hundreds of gu and common thongs, but they were still helpless against the ice silkworm. Even the mythical blood scorpion gu was about to be killed. However, Zhou Wen had used one hand to capture the ice silkworm. What terrifying strength was this? It was unbelievable, as expected of Worm Dugu's uncle master. He's indeed an old monster. Xiao Tianfang was secretly alarmed as his expression turned extremely ugly. After spending so much effort and paying such a huge price, the ice silkworm had been casually captured by someone else. Xiao Tianfang didn't need to guess to be certain that the other ice silkworm had definitely been taken away by Worm Dugu's uncle master. He wanted to snatch it, but Worm Dugu alone made him lose the courage to do so. Furthermore, the person in front of him was Worm Dugu's uncle master, an existence who had subdued the ice silkworm with one hand. Only then did Xiao Tianfang feel a sinister aura return and enter the common nei in his hand. I came back too late. Xiao Tianfang was somewhat helpless. The common nei in your hand is rather interesting, Zhou Wen said as he looked at the common nei in Xiao Tianfang's hand. The Xiao family's expressions changed. An existence that could capture the ice silkworm with one hand probably had no chance of resisting if he were to snatch their common nei. Even a mythical common nei probably didn't have the ability to fight such an existence. Old Master Dugu, The Dugu family is the head of the South District. You won't watch your Uncle Master snatch our Kamine, right? Xiao Liuqi felt uneasy as he looked at Worm Dugu and said through gritted teeth. Who said I'm snatching your things? I just found it a little special and asked in passing. Even if I really want it, I won't snatch the things of juniors like you. At most, I'll buy your Kamine. Why snatch it? Zhouwen said before Worm Dugu could speak. This Kamine is our Xiao family's heirloom. It's not for sale, Xiao Liuqi said. You won't sell it even if I exchange it with the ice silkworm? Zhouwen said indifferently. You want to use the ice silkworm to exchange for the Kamine? Xiao Tianfang and Xiao Liuqi were taken aback. Why? You're not even exchanging for the ice silkworm? What about the 2 ice silkworms? Zhouwen continued. Do you really want to use 2 ice silkworms to exchange for the Kamine? Xiao Tianfang and Xiao Liuqi looked at each other and saw the pleasant surprise in each other's eyes. From their point of view, although Gu Lady Kamine was indeed very strong, she was only slightly stronger than an ice silkworm. 2 ice silkworms were much more practical than Gu Lady Kamine. Furthermore, Gu Lady Kamine would bite back at her master. Xiao Tianfang would even consider exchanging 1 ice silkworm, much less 2. Uncle Master, you mustn't. Worm Dugu jumped in fright. Using 2 ice silkworms to exchange for the Kamine was a disadvantageous deal, no matter how he looked at it. However, they had no idea that the 2 ice silkworms were far inferior to Gu Lady. They weren't on the same level at all. Even if they really exchanged, Zhouwen would still benefit greatly. Furthermore, he had no intention of really giving the ice silkworms to the Xiao family. Chapter 801. Do you really want to use the ice silkworm to exchange for my Kamine? Xiao Tianfang hurriedly asked, afraid that Zhouwen would be convinced by Worm Dugu. That depends on whether your Kamine can interest me. I find it a little special. It's a little different from the Kamine I've seen before. Tell me, what's so special about her? Firstly, Zhouwen wanted to lure Xiao Tianfang into the trap. Secondly, he wanted to know more about the Kamine. Xiao Tianfang was somewhat hesitant. After all, he couldn't be sure if Zhouwen would use 2 ice silkworms to exchange for Gu Lady Kamine. If he explained Kamine's origins and Zhouwen didn't make the exchange, he would suffer a huge loss. Uncle Master, our Dugu family has plenty of Kamine if you want one. How about this? Come back with me and exchange the ice silkworms with our Dugu family. 2 ice silkworms can be exchanged for 2 Kamine. Whatever species you want, you can choose any Kamen Thong in the Dugu family, Worm Dugu said. Brother. Xiao Liuqi was a little anxious as he looked at Xiao Tianfang. Xiao Tianfang gritted his teeth and said to Zhouwen, I don't dare say that this Kamine of mine is unprecedented, but it's indeed extraordinary. It can be said to be unique. It's impossible to find a second one in the entire Federation. If you really want it, can we have a private chat? There are no outsiders here. Is there anything you can't say in person? Zhouwen asked. Xiao Tianfang said, It's not like you have to exchange it for my Kamine. Besides, even if you do, you don't want outsiders to know her secret after this Kamine belongs to you, right? That makes sense. All right then. Zhouwen nodded slightly. Uncle Master, that Kamine really isn't worth 2 ice silkworms. Exchange with me. Our Dugu family doesn't have any Kamine. Why do we have to seek something far away? Worm Dugu had the urge to pull Zhouwen back. Come on. I've seen all your Kamine. I'm sick of looking at them. What do you mean? I just think this Kamine is a little different, Zhouwen said. You really have a good eye. This way, please. Xiao Tianfang made an inviting gesture. Wait for me here. I'll go take a look and come back. Zhouwen instructed Li Xian and Worm Dugu before following Xiao Tianfang to the temporary camp they had set up in a nearby cave. When Xiao Tianfang and Xiao Liuqi saw that Zhouwen didn't care at all along the way, as though he didn't care if they had set up an ambush, They felt that Zhou was definitely extremely terrifying and didn't take them seriously. How should I address you? When they arrived at the cave, Xiao Tianfang got Xiao Liuqi to personally guard the door while he talked to Zhou alone. My surname is Zhou, Zhou said casually. Elder Zhou, you must be an expert in common thong. You must know this very well. You know that some common thong common nace refinement methods are very special. Xiao Tianfang probed. Zhou waved his hand and said disapprovingly, I don't care how this common nay came about. I just want to know what's so special about her. I only want something unique. If it's not unique, it's meaningless. Seeing that Zhou didn't mind the method of refining a common nay, Xiao Tianfang said with a smile, Elder Zhou, you are indeed a senior expert. Your insights are incomparable to ordinary people. This common nay of mine was refined by a master named Azan. The abilities this common nay possesses are different from ordinary common nay. She doesn't have ordinary abilities like changing one's luck, but she's very good at dealing with goo. She can independently capture mythical goo. Is that all? Zhou revealed a look of disappointment. Xiao Tianfang gritted his teeth and continued, to be honest, the baby that refined this common nay is the legendary reincarnation of the goo god. It has a natural restraining effect on goo. Our Xiao family is too useless and failed to raise her well. If an expert like you were to raise her, you might be able to unleash her full strength. When the time comes, it will definitely be of great use. The reincarnation of the goo god? That's interesting. I previously heard of a couple who reared goo. Their child was the reincarnation of the goo god. Could it be that? Zhou said. This. Xiao Tianfang didn't admit or deny it. I've heard of that matter as well. I originally wanted to rush over to see if I could refine a common thong, but I was a step too late. If the material of this common nay is that baby, I'll make the exchange, Zhou said. You are really a kindred spirit. Do you really want to exchange 2 ice silkworms for this common nay? Xiao Tianfang was still worried and wanted to confirm it. From the looks of it, this common nay of yours was really refined by that baby. It's no wonder you are so careful. As Zhou spoke, he placed the essence gold pot on the stone platform and pushed it in front of Xiao Tianfang. It's really refined by that baby. I want it. Take the ice silkworm first. Do you mind if I take a look at the ice silkworm inside? It's not that I don't trust you, but this concerns the rise and fall of our Xiao family. Xiao Tianfang asked carefully. At this stage, he was still very careful. Just open it. My essence gold pot is extraordinary. As long as the goo are trapped, even the Dragon King goo won't be able to escape, Zhou said indifferently. When Xiao Tianfang heard that the essence gold pot was so powerful, he picked it up and carefully observed it. He felt that it was indeed a good pot, but he didn't know what was good about it. The Xiao family's goo rearing could only be considered a half-baked profession. They weren't as proficient as common thong. How could he recognize a goo pot created by worm dugu? Xiao Tianfang didn't dare open it, afraid that the ice silkworms would escape. He wasn't confident that he could escape from the 2 ice silkworms. However, on second thought, common nay's life was connected to his. If Zhou wanted common nay, it was impossible for him to die. With this in mind, Xiao Tianfang carefully opened a crack in the goo pot and looked in. Indeed, he saw 2 ice silkworms inside, but they were restrained by the essence gold pot. No matter how they struggled, they couldn't rush out. Xiao Tianfang was relieved. He completely opened the lid, and the 2 ice silkworms inside only circled in the pot, unable to crawl out. I never expected there to be such a goo pot in this world. My horizons have really been broadened today. Xiao Tianfang thought for a moment and said, Since you are so sincere, I won't hide it from you. This common nay of mine was refined by that baby back then. It has a strong restraining effect on goo. It's also an extremely powerful existence among common nay. It can be considered a fusion of goo and common nay. It's a unique existence in the world. You won't regret changing it. As expected. I knew I wouldn't be wrong. In that case, the 2 ice silkworms are yours. Release her intrinsic lock and give her to me, Zhouwen said. Xiao Tianfang said in embarrassment. Elder Zhou, your pot is too high level, but our Xiao family can't compare to you. Without a pot that can store the ice silkworms, there's no way we can bring them back. We originally wanted to use this Kumen-ne to control them, but now that the Kumen-ne has been transferred to you, there's really no other way. Can you lend us the goo pot for now? We'll definitely return it after the domestication is successful. Chapter 802. Zhouwen thought to himself, this Xiao Tianfang is really greedy. He's already eyeing the goo pot so quickly. This was exactly what Zhouwen wanted. Zhouwen said indifferently, it's just a goo pot. I have plenty of them. It's nothing. Just take it back. There's no need to return it. Elder Zhou, are you serious? Xiao Tianfang was overjoyed. He even had the intention to kneel and kowtow to Zhouwen. The premise is that your Kumen-ne is really the reincarnation of the goo god. If I discover that something's amiss, even your Xiao family probably won't be able to keep it, much less the ice silkworm and the goo pot, Zhouwen said indifferently. Xiao Tianfang was alarmed as he restrained the surprise in his heart. He said solemnly, don't worry. This Kumen-ne was definitely refined by the goo god's reincarnation. Furthermore, it was personally refined by me. There's no mistake. If there's any falsehood, I'm willing to suffer the punishment of 10,000 goo drilling my heart. Xiao Tianfang swore and told the truth. Then I'm relieved. Release her intrinsic lock, Zhouwen said. Release the intrinsic lock directly? Do you want me to transfer the intrinsic lock to you? Xiao Tianfang asked in puzzlement. There's no need. It's just a mythical Kumen-ne. If I can't even suppress her, I'll have wasted all my years of playing Kumen-thong, Zhouwen said indifferently. All right. Xiao Tianfang felt that Zhouwen was indeed an important figure. He didn't even think much of the mythical Kumen-ne. It was no wonder he was Worm Dugu's uncle master. Thinking back to how Zhouwen had casually subdued the ice silkworm Goo King, he didn't hesitate anymore. He handed the Kumen-ne to Zhouwen before taking out a pouch. With the pouch in hand, he bit the tip of his tongue and spat a mouthful of blood on it. The moment his blood touched the pouch, it burned like a flame. As the pouch was burned, the Kumen-ne in Zhouwen's hand trembled. Xiao Tianfang's expression turned nasty. His face was pale as cold sweat instantly covered his forehead. He looked like he was in great pain. Zhouwen had consulted Gu Shanshui and knew that this intrinsic lock connected the Kumen-ne to his lifeline. If he removed it, it would cause him great damage. The reason why Xiao Tianfang was willing to remove the intrinsic lock was probably because he had not been able to fully control the Gu Poison Lady. Instead, he had suffered from the backlash of the Gu Poison Lady's power. He had been living a hard life for a long time. Now that he could finally escape Gu Lady, he was even more eager than Zhouwen. With 2 ice silkworm Gu Kings and that Gu Pot, Xiao Clan's future achievements would definitely be stronger than before, and the pain of the Gu Lady's backlash would also leave him. Kacha. After the pouch was completely burned, something seemed to shatter on Kumen-ne's skull. Zhouwen took a look and saw a drop of blood seeping out from the top of her skull. Xiao Tianfang, on the other hand, spat out a mouthful of blood. It seemed that his injuries were not light. Elder Zhou, quickly suppress Kumen-ne. Don't let her escape, Xiao Tianfang said as he endured the pain. He wasn't afraid that Gu Lady would run. After all, he had already sold her to Zhouwen. It had nothing to do with him whether she ran or not. He was just afraid that she would find trouble with him. The deal is over, I should go. Zhouwen grabbed Kumen-ne and injected a wisp of essence energy into her. Kumen-ne was immediately enveloped by essence energy before he placed her in his bag and stood up. Someone, send Elder Zhou back. Xiao Tianfang called someone over and said, Elder Zhou, take care. It's not convenient for me, so I won't be sending you off. Recuperate well. You broke the intrinsic lock. Your injuries aren't light either. With that said, Zhouwen left with Kamine. Xiao Liuqi came over and asked nervously and excitedly, Brother, did we really succeed? Did we really exchange for those 2 ice silkworm goo kings? It's true. It's those 2 ice silkworm goo kings without a doubt. There's also a mark we left on them. There's no mistake. Xiao Tianfang was also very excited. That Elder Zhou didn't know that there was something wrong with Goo Lady. He thought that he had taken advantage of her. Now that we have 2 ice silkworm goo kings in hand, and I've removed the backlash from my body, each of us will have an ice silkworm goo king. In 2 to 3 years, after we tame them, our Xiao family will have a chance to advance further. By the way, take a look at this goo pot. It's an impressive goo pot. Xiao Tianfang opened the goo pot and let Xiao Liuqi look at the ice silkworm. He even demonstrated the goo pot's functions. That Elder Zhou actually gave us such a treasure so casually. What a fool, Xiao Liuqi sighed. Zhouwen had already walked far away, but Truth Listener still allowed him to hear the conversation between the 2 brothers clearly. He couldn't help but sneer inwardly. I wonder who's the fool. Goo Lady could easily make the ice silkworms obey her. This was a truly terrifying existence. The 2 Xiao brothers didn't know that they had a precious treasure on them. They thought that they had taken advantage of them after exchanging for 2 ice silkworm goo kings. As for the so-called precious goo pot, although it was indeed extraordinary, it was impossible for it to restrain the ice silkworm goo kings. The reason they stayed inside obediently was because Goo Lady was controlling them and ordering them to cooperate. Otherwise, they would have long rushed out. The Xiao brothers treated them as treasures, but they didn't know that they were the most lethal talismans. After Goo Lady obtained freedom, she wanted to attack the Xiao brothers, but Zhouwen held down her intrinsic Kamine, preventing her from taking revenge now. After all, Zhouwen was trading with the Xiao brothers in the name of the Dugu family. If he killed them now, it wouldn't be good for the Dugu family's reputation. Worm Dugu had already helped him put on an act, so he couldn't implicate the Dugu family. Zhouwen touched the restless Kamine in his backpack and whispered, There's no rush. You are already free. There are still 2 ice silkworm goo kings by their side. Are you afraid that you can't take revenge? The Kamine slowly quietened down. After the intrinsic lock was removed, Goo Lady had already entered the Kamine. Previously, due to the restrictions of the intrinsic lock, she couldn't even return to her body. She could only listen to Xiao Tianfang's orders and do things for him. Otherwise, it would be very easy for Xiao Tianfang to kill her. Now it was different. The intrinsic lock had been removed, so Goo Lady was no longer restricted. After meeting up with Li Xian and Worm Dugu, the 3 of them returned to their residence. On the way back, Worm Dugu asked with a smile, Uncle Master, was my acting all right? Not bad. It's just a little exaggerated, Zhouwen said with a smile. Only exaggerated acting will be acknowledged by others. Didn't Xiao Tianfang believe it? On account of my age, and how I'm still working so hard to act with you, shouldn't you consider teaching me a few tricks to adopting a phoenix? Worm Dugu said. The trick is to find a phoenix and be fancied by it. Zhouwen was telling the truth, but his truth left Worm Dugu depressed. On the way back, Zhouwen felt that something was amiss with the Kamine. The jade-like bones were slowly growing. Not only were the bones growing larger, but flesh and meridians were also growing on them. What's going on? Don't tell me she's coming back to life? Zhouwen was alarmed as he hurriedly stored her in the chaos space. Otherwise, it would be too shocking to be seen by others outside. Chapter 803. Crack. The crystal container outside the Kamine shattered and the corpse oil inside flowed out. The Kamine was already so large that the container couldn't contain it. Her flesh and blood were plump and her skin grew out. Then, her hair and fingernails. In just a moment, the come-in-nay, who had shrunk into a ball and was blurry, turned into a living baby. The fair and tender baby looked no different from a normal baby, but if one carefully observed her body, they would realize that her heart wasn't beating. The blood in her body wasn't flowing. She was said to be a dead person, but everything about her body was normal. There was vitality in her body, and even her eyes had opened. She was like a normal baby, but she didn't even have a heart. It was difficult to tell if she was dead or alive. When Zhou returned to his residence, the baby had already grown to the size of a 1-year-old child. However, it looked like she had stopped growing. Zhou originally imagined that she would grow to the size of Gu Lady, but to his surprise, she stopped growing. Could it be because she was in the chaos space and was affected by the chaos space? Zhou brought the girl out and bathed her. He washed away the corpse oil on her body and placed her on the bed. However, the girl didn't continue growing. She remained the same size as she sat on the bed and looked at Zhou expressionlessly. Zhou took out a set of clothes he had bought for demonic neonate from the chaos space. He originally wanted demonic neonate to wear it for fun when she had nothing to do, but now it came in handy. However, she was slightly smaller than demonic neonate, so she was still very big when she wore it. However, this was already the most suitable clothes Zhou could find for her. He could only make do with it and buy it in the future. Do you know how to wear clothes? Zhou asked the girl. The girl shook her head and continued looking at Zhou. Could it be that when a person becomes a child, even their intelligence has returned? Zhou had no choice but to help her put it on. Then, he looked at the girl sitting on the bed and asked, "Do you still remember me?" Zhou didn't know what was going on. The knowledge he had learned from Gu Shanshui didn't include this. According to Gu Shanshui, if the come-in-nay didn't have any restrictions, her spirit body could return to her main body, but she wouldn't revive. She would only have autonomy. Typically, come-in-nay who had ancient rights were very dangerous. As they died too unjustly, the resentment in them wouldn't dissipate. They would constantly harm others. Zhou didn't want to raise Gu Lady like Xiao Tianfang, so he didn't plan on turning Gu Lady into his come-in-nay. Instead, he planned on using another method to take her away. However, to his surprise, Gu Lady came to life before Zhou could use that method. She had even turned into a baby. The method Gu Shanshui had taught him was probably useless. The little girl nodded. It seemed that she still remembered him. From the looks of it, you still have your memories. Zhou heaved a sigh of relief. Now that you are free, what plans do you have? Zhou asked the girl. The girl looked at Zhou without answering as though she didn't know what he meant. What I mean is, where do you want to go in the future? Zhou was afraid that she wouldn't understand, so he changed his wording. The little girl continued to look at him without saying a word. He didn't know if she understood him or not. What's your name? Zhou wanted to call her, but he realized that he definitely didn't know her name. He couldn't call her Gu Lady like Xiao Tianfang and company, right? She probably wouldn't like that form of address either. The girl finally reacted as she shook her head at Zhou. Don't you have a name? Zhou asked. Seeing the girl nod, Zhou knew that he had guessed correctly. After some thought, he said, Then shall I give you a name? The girl nodded again. This made Zhou know that she could understand him. Her intelligence hadn't regressed, but for some reason, she couldn't speak. Zhou seriously considered for a while, and sized up the girl's appearance before carefully asking, What do you think of the name Xiaoli? The girl's face remained expressionless as she subtly turned her face to the side. Isn't it good? How about calling her Little Na? Zhou asked after some thought. The girl was expressionless as though she hadn't heard Zhou. She raised her arm and pointed at Zhou's chest. Zhou looked down and realized that there were only clothes on his chest. There was nothing else. There were no patterns or words. Could it be? She's referring to this. Zhou reached into his collar and took out a pendant that looked like ivory. This was a pendant carved by Wang Mingyuan. It was said to be carved from the white dragon's tooth in Old Dragon's Well. As for the origins of the dragon's tooth, it was said that eldest senior brother Lu Yun had stolen it from Old Dragon's Well, but Wang Mingyuan said that he had picked it up. She can still see through things. From the looks of it, her abilities are still there. Zhou knew that he had guessed correctly when he saw the girl's finger move along with the pendant. You want to use this pendant as a name? I know. This is carved from a dragon's tooth. That's why you want to be called Little Dragon, right? Zhou was enlightened. The girl was expressionless as she stared at him without any reaction. After staring at him for a while without blinking, Zhou felt a little creeped out. Isn't that so? Is that Little Tooth? Zhou asked guiltily. The girl looked at Zhou with a strange look before slowly nodding. Zhou looked at the girl's eyes and felt that she was about to give up. He felt that it wasn't a good idea, so he thought for a moment and said, Little Tooth doesn't sound nice. It doesn't sound like a girl's name. Why don't we call you Yer? Sprout means sprout. I hope you can grow up quickly. The girl nodded slightly. Although she was still a little reluctant, she didn't have the expression of giving up like before. All right, I'll call you Yer from now on. Zhou wiped the sweat from his forehead before looking at Yer and saying, can you still control the ice silkworm Gu King? Yer nodded and Zhou felt relieved. If Yer couldn't control the ice silkworm Gu King, his plan would fail. Although the outcome might be the same, Zhou didn't like things he couldn't control. Can you still make others unable to see you? Zhou asked again. This time, Yer shook her head. Clearly, she could no longer exist in a spirit-body state. Zhou asked Yer a few more questions and roughly understood something related to Yer. However, his understanding was very limited. She couldn't speak, so Zhou could only test her. Now, he only knew that Yer's abilities, memory, and intelligence hadn't changed. They were the same as before, but for some reason, her body remained in this state and didn't continue growing. Is she considered a living person now? Zhou couldn't determine Yer's situation, so he could only ask her, What do you want to do now? Kill. Yer actually said one word. So you can speak? Zhou looked at Yer in shock. He had been gesticulating all day, but it turned out that Yer could speak. Chapter 804. However, when Zhou asked Yer again, she only nodded and shook her head without saying a word. Could it be that she only knows this one word? Although Zhou felt that it was impossible for her to only say one word, there was nothing he could do if Yer didn't say it. Yer suddenly stood up and walked out. However, after taking 2 steps, her legs went limp and she fell to the ground. From the looks of it, her physical strength was about the same as an ordinary baby. Yer frowned slightly as her eyes focused. Her body actually floated up. How strange. Her psyche is still as strong as before. It's at the mythical level, but her body is as weak as a baby. Zhou also found it odd. Just as Zhou was about to say something to Yer, he saw her fly out the window and head for the Xiao family. Afraid that something would happen, Zhou put on the invisibility cloak and followed. In the Xiao family, Xiao Tianfang and Xiao Liuqi were preparing a plan to tame the ice silkworm. They couldn't wait to successfully tame it. What a treasure! A powerful Gu like the ice silkworm Gu King is actually trapped inside without the ability to rush out. It's much easier for us to tame it, Xiao Liuqi said as he looked at the ice silkworm inside. Xiao Tianfang was also observing the 2 ice silkworms. The 2 ice silkworms seemed to be tired from crawling around inside. They were motionless inside and should be resting. Xiao Liuqi took out a Gu, tied it to a rope, and threw it into the essence gold pot. This was the food that the ice silkworms liked to eat. He had to use this method to lure the ice silkworms, but he didn't let them eat it. Then, he would gradually train them. Xiao Liuqi placed the Gu in and was about to pull it out when the ice silkworm took action. However, to his surprise, an ice silkworm swallowed the Gu at an astonishing speed. It didn't give him any time to pull it out. The ice silkworm is too fast. It will be very troublesome to domesticate it. Xiaoliuqi was about to pull out the rope and get another gu. But who knew that the ice silkworm inside would flash out of the pot and appear on the edge of the pot? Xiao Liuqi and Xiao Tianfang turned pale with fright and hurriedly retreated. How could this be? Xiao Tianfang was shocked and felt that something was very wrong. Before Xiao Liuqi could say anything, the other ice silkworm crawled out, as though the essence gold pot had lost its effect. The two of them ran out without hesitation. When they came out of the secret room, they were stunned by the scene in front of them. Inside the huge temple, there were all sorts of gu worms crawling all over the place. The Xiao family was fighting the gu worms with all their might, and what was even more terrifying was that the gu worms they had tamed had actually betrayed their masters and attacked them. Screams and blood were everywhere. How could this be? What exactly happened? Xiao Tian's eyes were red. The entire temple seemed to have turned into hell. There's a problem. There must be a problem. It must be that Zhou fellow. He didn't want to give us the ice silkworm at all. Xiao Liuqi felt despair. The Xiao family already had many gu, but now all of them had betrayed them. Even the mythical blood scorpion gu had rushed out and was crazily slaughtering. There were also a few mythical gu that they had captured in the past that were slaughtering crazily. Any one of them was already very difficult for them to deal with, much less so many gu. Now it was impossible for them to even rush out of the temple. Zhou, even if I die and become a ghost, I won't let you off, Xiao Tianfang shouted in grief and indignation. In the sky, a figure slowly descended. Xiao Tianfang and Xiao Liuqi looked over and realized that it was a 1-year-old girl. However, the little girl's face didn't have the innocence and adorableness a child should have. She was expressionless and cold as she floated in the air, looking down at Xiao Tianfang and Xiao Liuqi coldly. The surrounding gu slaughtered wantonly, but no gu attacked Xiao Tianfang and Xiao Liuqi. Gu lady. You are gu lady. How is this possible? Xiao Tianfang carefully sized up Ye and suddenly pointed at her as he shouted in horror. After all, he had once been connected to Ye's intrinsic life. He was all too familiar with Ye's aura. Although the intrinsic lock had been removed, he could still sense the extraordinary aura on Ye's body. How can she be gu lady? That's impossible, right? Xiao Liuqi naturally didn't believe that the girl in front of him was gu lady. It was impossible for Kumin Ne to be revived. The girl in front of him was clearly a living person. Sixth brother, are you muddle-headed? Apart from gu lady, who can control so many gu? Who can make all our gu betray us? Also, her aura is definitely gu lady's. There's no mistake, Xiao Tianfang said in horror. At that moment, the two ice silkworms crawled out as transparent wings appeared on their back. They flew to gu lady's side as though they were protecting her. Xiao Tianfang suddenly seemed to understand something. Xiao Tianfang suddenly seemed to have understood something. His body trembled as he gritted his teeth and said, I understand now, I understand now. It turns out that Zhou doesn't have any ability at all. What treasure pot? What subduing the ice silkworm with one hand? It's all fake. The gu lady can subdue the ice silkworm at all. She's the one controlling the ice silkworm. We actually didn't realize that her power has already reached such a level. Xiao Liuqi was also horrified as his face was filled with despair. It's over. Brother, we're doomed this time. We shouldn't have targeted her back then. Now she's here for revenge. The entire Xiao family was dead. Gu worms had surrounded them like a tide, surrounding the two of them in the middle. The entire temple was drowned in gu worms, leaving only the place where they were standing without gu worms. You deserve death. With Ye's voice, the gu surged towards them like a tidal wave. The Xiao brothers fought with all their might, but they were quickly drowned by the gu. Countless gu drilled into their bodies and tore at their organs and flesh. Amidst the inhuman cries, the Xiao brothers were gnawed to the point that not even their bones were left. Zhouwen flew in the air, and couldn't help but frown when he saw the tragic state of the Shao family. He was somewhat worried. It was understandable that Ye wanted revenge, but it was indeed a little too ruthless to kill them all without asking any questions. The Shao family might not be filled with bad people, nor might they have done bad things. It wasn't that Zhou pitted the Shao family, but he was afraid that with Ye's personality, she would treat him and his friends the same way she treated the Shao family if he or the people around him angered her in the future. While Zhou was still thinking, the goo had already begun to disperse. In a moment, none of them were left. Only Ye flew over with the 2 ice silkworms. Zhou took out the essence gold pot that Worm Dugu had given him, and the 2 ice silkworms obediently burrowed in. Chapter 805. Now you are free. You can go anywhere you want and do whatever you want, Zhou said to Ye in front of him. However, Ye only looked at Zhou without saying a word. She clearly knew how to speak, but for some reason, she didn't say a word. Do you have a place you want to go or something you want to do? Zhou asked Ye. Ye shook her head slightly. Before she was born, she had been refined into a Kumane by the Shao brothers. She probably didn't know where she wanted to go or what she wanted. Then follow me first. However, if you follow me, I have a few requests. If you can do it, you can follow me. If you can't, you can go by yourself, Zhou said to Ye. Ye didn't say a word as she looked at Zhou. First, if you follow me, you are not allowed to hurt anyone without my orders. Second, you are not allowed to use goo to harm others without my permission. Third, you can reason with me, but you have to listen to me in the end. Fourth, don't casually show your strength in front of others. Can you do it? Zhou asked Ye. Ye looked at Zhou and nodded. She didn't hesitate, but it was unknown if she really understood. Seeing Ye nod, Zhou felt very strange. Although he was somewhat happy, he was also somewhat worried. Even Zhou couldn't tell if Ye could be considered a human. If she still had the taboos of a Kumane, there would probably be trouble in the future. However, at this point, Zhou could only take her back. He took Ye to buy some clothes. Although she didn't speak, she was very obedient. She did whatever Zhou said, looking like an ordinary obedient baby. She didn't have the ruthlessness to annihilate the Shao family at all. Old Zhou, where did you abduct a child? Li Xian asked in surprise when he saw Zhou return with a child. I picked her up on the way, Zhou answered. Could she have gotten lost? Li Xian asked. No, the place I went to is a dimensional zone where goo appear. No one will bring a child there, Zhou said. Who's so heartless to abandon such a cute little girl? Li Xian looked at the little girl with pity. I don't know, but I plan on adopting her and taking her there. Zhou took out the goo pot and stuffed it into Li Xian's hands. The 2 ice silkworms are inside. How's the Shao family? Li Xian held the goo pot and asked with an odd expression. They were destroyed by that Kumane. Zhou didn't elaborate because the scene back then was just too tragic. This is what they deserve. Aren't they afraid of the wrath of heaven for killing and digging out the infant? Li Xian said. Does this child have a name? Li Xian asked as he stroked Ye's head. Ye, I named her. When Zhou saw that Ye didn't have any special reaction when Li Xian touched her head, he felt relieved. What kind of name is this? How can such a cute little girl use such a name? You should at least be called Crescent Moon or something. Even the common Xiaoyao would be 10,000 times better than Ye, right? No, you have to give her a new name. Li Xian immediately shook his head when he heard Ye's name. We'll talk about it when we register. Ye can be treated as a nickname. Zhou really didn't know how to give names. Soon, the matter of the Shao family being wiped out overnight was discovered. Many people went to take a look and realized that there were traces of a large number of goo. They guessed that the Shao family had been wiped out by goo, but no one could explain the exact situation. The number 1 Shao family in Chiang Rai had been wiped out overnight. This became a legend in Chiang Rai, and there were all sorts of rumors. Li Xian planned on making a trip to the Dugu family with Worm Dugu to learn some knowledge about Gu, but Zhou Wen stayed behind. This was because there was still no definite news from Primordial Spore. He wanted to wait and see. Primordial Spore didn't successfully parasitize, but it didn't die either. Zhou Wen didn't know what the situation was. Li Mabai also returned to Luoyang with Butterfly and Mute. Gu Shanshui even called and said that he had found a way to trap the corpse bug and asked Zhou Wen to retrieve the calabash. Zhou Wen temporarily couldn't go to Mong Sat, so Gu Shanshui got Gu Lu to deliver the calabash to him. As Zhou Wen waited for news from Primordial Spore, he grinded dungeons. The Ancient Sword Tomb and the Valley of No Return were very good dungeons that produced many good items. Now, Zhou Wen mainly grinded these two dungeons. Furthermore, the other dungeons had mythical creatures and rare creatures. He had to grind them every time. Zhou Wen had gone to the Snow Valley to the right of the Valley of No Return a few times, but the blood-colored avatar would quickly die every time he entered. It was fine flying in the air, but when he was in the air, he could only see the snow in the valley. He didn't see any Gu. Up to now, Zhou Wen still hadn't figured out why the blood-colored avatar had died in the snow. With Truth Listener and Supreme Hell King's abilities, I should be able to sense a Gu hiding in the snow, no matter how small it is. Furthermore, the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder didn't react, meaning that it wasn't a taboo power. What killed the blood-colored avatar? Zhou Wen studied it for a while but failed to find the secret of the Snow Valley. Zhou Wen guessed that most of the people who entered the Valley of No Return died in the Snow Valley. After all, those who dared to go there were all experts at nurturing Gu. There would be a few people who had a way to deal with the Gu in front of them. However, this Snow Valley wasn't something that could be dealt with just by knowing Gu. While Zhou Wen was gaming, Yer sat on a small stool and looked at him. She didn't make a fuss. Although Yer didn't have a heartbeat, she wasn't much different from a normal child. She also needed to eat to grow. Zhou Wen could sense that she was slowly growing at a speed similar to a normal child's. In a world that resembled a mystic realm, there was a huge palace that stood at the peak of a mountain. At the top of the palace was a huge statue that looked like a snake or dragon. On the mountain that resembled a heavenly pillar, there was only a single stone staircase that spiraled upwards. The foot of the mountain led all the way to the peak. At that moment, a white-robed man with lightning bolts running through his body walked to the stone steps. Wang Mingyuan, you actually dared to leave without permission and come to Dragon God Mountain instead of guarding the divine tree. Don't you know that this is where the dragon gods live? It's not a place a bastard like you can come. Are you tired of living? In front of the stone steps, a monster with a human body and a snake tail blocked Wang Mingyuan's path. From today onwards, I'm the king of the dragon gods, Wang Mingyuan said calmly. Chapter 806. The human-bodied, snake-tailed monster guarding the stone steps seemed to have heard the funniest thing in the world. It convulsed with laughter, almost to the point of tears. You really think highly of yourself? Don't tell me you really think that advancing to the mythical stage is impressive? In a dimensional war, the so-called mythical stage of you humans are just cannon fodder. This is because only by reaching that level can one cross dimensions without being killed by the barriers between different dimensions. Only an ancient forbidden land like Earth would take the mythical stage seriously. The monster continued saying disdainfully, just like how humans on Earth can't survive in space because there's no oxygen and other conditions you need to survive there. Becoming a mythical creature is equivalent to humans learning to survive in an environment without oxygen in a dimensional battle. The monster continued speaking disdainfully. There's naturally hope if you can learn to breathe and survive, Wang Mingyuan said. Only things that can't be done need hope. You have no way of understanding what kind of existence the Dragon King is. If an ant like you hadn't come out of an ancient forbidden land, you wouldn't even have the right to be a servant of the dragon gods, much less guard the divine tree. Yet you actually dare challenge the Dragon King? You have no idea what's good for you. There's no need to find the Dragon King. I'll show you what true strength is today, the monster said as a strange power rose from its body. It struck out at Wang Mingyuan with one hand. The terrifying power transformed into a gigantic snake that devoured Wang Mingyuan. This casual strike's might was already comparable to Tyrant Behemoth in its absolute strength state. Wang Mingyuan continued to walk towards the stone steps, ignoring the terrifying attack of the giant snake. However, when the gigantic snake arrived in front of him, it automatically disintegrated and turned into nothingness in the blink of an eye. You've actually broken through the dimension wall? However, don't you think you have the right to fight my dragon gods just like that? Aren't you being too arrogant? Although the monster was arrogant, its expression turned serious. It no longer had its previous contempt. As it watched Wang Mingyuan walk over step by step, the monster clasped its hands together and presented a strange attack posture, like a venomous snake that could bite at any moment. I'll let you witness the true power of the dragon gods. Dragon God descends. As the monster roared, the strange power on its body rose to the extreme. The terrifying power immediately swept through the entire space. Giant serpent silhouettes, with a power that could destroy heaven and earth, bombarded Wang Mingyuan from all directions. Countless giant snake shadows tried to devour Wang Mingyuan, but when they reached Wang Mingyuan, they automatically disintegrated. They couldn't touch his body at all. It was as if his body was protected by a god. How is this possible? The monster was shocked to see that its dragon god's descent couldn't even touch Wang Mingyuan's clothes. Wang Mingyuan was less than 3 meters away from him, and the stone steps leading up to the mountain were right in front of him. Dragon, it's not like that. Wang Mingyuan glanced at the monster and gently waved his hand. The monster's body seemed to be grabbed by an invisible hand and was directly thrown out. Boom! His body slammed into the stone wall, creating a crater. All the bones in his body seemed to have shattered, and his body was covered in blood. After struggling a few times, he failed to stand up, but blood spewed out of his mouth. You've advanced to the calamity grade? The monster looked at Wang Mingyuan, who was pierced by countless lightning bolts, in horror as though it had seen a ghost. Wang Mingyuan had advanced to the mythical stage and used the power of the 6 holy temples to break through the dimensional barrier and enter the dimension. It hadn't been long since he entered the dimension. He had even suffered the punishment of lightning penetrating his body. Yet, he had advanced to the calamity grade so quickly. This was just too shocking. Even among the mythical 8, there were only a handful of people who could advance to the calamity grade so quickly. However, Wang Mingyuan didn't answer. He stepped onto the stone steps and walked towards the Dragon God Temple at the top of the mountain. Even if you advance to the calamity grade, you are only an ant in front of the great Dragon King. The monster roared, but he didn't receive any response. Zhou waited, but he didn't receive any news of Primordial Spore's success or failure. As it was too far away, he couldn't retrieve it. He couldn't help but feel anxious. From the looks of it, I can only make another trip to Dragon Corpse River and find the Dragon King Gu. Even if I can't successfully parasitize it, I have to bring Primordial Spore back. With Tai Sui, the chick, and Yer by his side, Zhou wasn't afraid of Gu at all. Therefore, he planned on making a trip to Dragon Corpse River himself. Zhou didn't know the family that built the boat, nor did he plan on spending a huge sum of money to buy such a special boat. He bought an ordinary speedboat and transported it to Dragon Corpse River. Friend, why did you get a speedboat to Dragon Corpse River? Someone who was preparing to enter Dragon Corpse River to catch Gu saw Zhou speedboat and came forward to ask curiously. To catch Gu in the river, Zhou answered. The person sized up Zhou and asked, Friend, are you from out of town? I just came to Chiang Rai a few days ago, Zhou answered honestly. No wonder. I'm afraid you still don't know the taboo of the Dragon Corpse River. Ordinary boats will be surrounded by goo worms when they enter the river. You have to first get a specially made boat that's resistant to goo worms, the man reminded him out of goodwill. Ordinary goo worms shouldn't attack my ship. As Zhou spoke, he picked up Yer and boarded the speedboat. He activated the speedboat's engine and set off for Dragon Corpse River. That person said to a disciple beside him, "That young man is really crazy. He actually drove a speedboat into the Dragon Corpse River." Although the engine won't stall on the Dragon Corpse River, the goo in the Dragon Corpse River will be attracted by the engine's sound. When the time comes, they will crawl into the engine and cause damage to it. He actually brought a child with him. This person is really hopeless. One look and you can tell that he's from the East region. He's very arrogant. If he wants to die, there's nothing we can do to stop him. The disciple curled his lips and said. Zhou drove the speedboat as the chick and Tai Sui stood at the bow. As for Yer, she sat beside Zhou and sized up the Dragon Corpse River curiously. The goo in the Dragon Corpse River sensed the chick's aura and didn't dare approach the speedboat. However, Yer extended her hand and beckoned. A few goo approached and swam beside the speedboat as though they were protecting it. Since I've already retrieved the calabash, should I use Yer to subdue some goo? Zhou thought to himself. Zhou naturally wasn't interested in ordinary goo. If he really planned on subduing them, they would at least be at the level of the ice silkworm. It would be even better if he could subdue the Dragon King goo. Chapter 807. The speedboat was much faster than the wooden boat. As it sped across the river, Zhou could clearly sense that he was getting closer and closer to primordial spore. His perception of primordial spore became stronger and stronger. To goo rearing, the Dragon Corpse River was as dangerous as hell, but it wasn't dangerous in front of Zhou. He rushed all the way and quickly sensed where primordial spore was. Zhou could sense that primordial spore was below the boat. Furthermore, he could sense that the behemoth, the Dragon King goo, was also below. As he was very close, Zhou could sense it more clearly this time. Primordial spore had been attempting to parasitize the Dragon King goo and control its body. However, the Dragon King goo was different from ordinary mythical creatures. Its body was an amalgamation, and so was its soul. It was formed from countless souls gathered together to form a whole. Primordial spore wanted to parasitize the Dragon King goo's soul, but it realized that it could only control a portion of the soul. No matter which part of the Dragon King goo's soul it parasitized, it couldn't completely control the Dragon King goo. Therefore, it was in a stalemate. It was easy to complete the soul parasitization, but it was impossible to control the Dragon King goo no matter what. Unless primordial spore could split into thousands of tiny primordial spore and carry out a complete parasitization, it could truly control the Dragon King goo. Yer, can you control the Dragon King goo below? Zhou pinned his hopes on Yer. However, Yer shook her head. She couldn't control the Dragon King goo. Is it because it's too strong? Zhou asked Yer. Although Yer had the ability to control goo, there was a limit. The Dragon King goo was already a top mythical creature, so it was normal for Yer to be unable to control it with her mental strength. To his surprise, Yer shook her head again. However, this time, she said, I can't communicate. You mean that you can control goo because you can communicate with them? You can't control goo that you can't communicate with or are unwilling to cooperate with. Zhou immediately understood Yer's abilities. Yer nodded. From the looks of it, Zhou's guess was right. However, for some reason, Yer and the Dragon King goo couldn't communicate. This way, Zhou's hope of using Yer's ability to subdue the Dragon King goo was shattered. Is there any other way? After some thought, Zhou didn't have a good solution. Even if he made Tai Sui transform into a fish and enter the river, it would at most eat a portion of the Dragon King goo's body. It was impossible to kill it. With this in mind, Zhou suddenly had an idea. Since I can't subdue it, I wonder if I can store it in the calabash. If I can store it in the calabash, even if I can't use it, I can still give it to Tai Sui as food. But how can I put such a big Dragon King goo into the calabash? After being removed from the vines, the gourd no longer had the ability to absorb the goo worms. However, the goo worms would not resist entering the gourd, but they would not take the initiative to drill into the gourd. Looks like I can only chase the dog into a dead end. Zhou used Truth Listener's ability to scout the terrain at the bottom of the river before summoning Tai Sui. Zhou first got Tai Sui to use its mimicry ability to transform into a tiny ancient tadpole. However, the ancient tadpole that Tai Sui transformed into was white. It was different from the color of a real ancient tadpole, but there was no difference in appearance. After placing Tai Sui in the river, Tai Sui swam towards the bottom of the river. Zhou also put on the dragon scale armor formed by the demon blood true dragon. He wore the invisibility cloak and entered the river with the calabash. However, Zhou headed in another direction. The Dragon King Goo had suffered greatly from Tai Sui, so it would definitely be afraid when it saw Tai Sui. However, Tai Sui had previously transformed into the form of a chick. Now that it had transformed into an ancient tadpole, the Dragon King Goo failed to recognize it. Seeing a tiny tadpole approach it, the Dragon King Goo unleashed its dragon might and swallowed Tai Sui in one mouthful. When Tai Sui entered the Dragon King Goo's body, it immediately bit left and right and began devouring the Dragon King Goo's body. The Dragon King Goo was alarmed when it realized that the tadpole it had devoured wasn't dead and was still devouring its body. It wanted to get Tai Sui out of its body. It was not a real dragon, but a condensation of countless miniature goo insects. It could control its body freely. There was a hole in its abdomen, and Tai Sui was swallowing its body, but it was suddenly thrown out. After Tai Sui came out, it directly used its mimicry ability and transformed into the Dragon King Goo. The two Dragon King Goo appeared at the bottom of the river, making it almost impossible to tell the real from the fake. However, the real Dragon King Goo could change color, but Tai Sui was always white. It was easy for people who knew to tell the difference. Unfortunately, Tai Sui's mimicry ability was just a facade. No matter how big and ferocious it became, its strength was still that small. It didn't have the ability of the Dragon King Goo. It only looked more terrifying. However, the Dragon King Goo was frightened. Tai Sui was its nemesis, and now that it had become so big, the Dragon King Goo was afraid that it would be devoured by Tai Sui. It immediately fled frantically. Tai Sui's speed couldn't keep up with the Dragon King Goo, so it could only slowly chase behind. It was useless to look like the Dragon King Goo. It didn't have the Dragon King Goo's speed, so it couldn't catch up. The Dragon King Goo was given a huge fright as it fled in a panic. It only wanted to stay as far away from Tai Sui as possible. Zhou used Primordial Spore to take advantage of a portion of the Dragon King Goo's soul, allowing it to have some effect and affect the Dragon King Goo's escape. That was originally the right path. The possibility of the Dragon King Goo choosing that place was the highest. Zhou was only buying insurance. He stood at the narrow entrance at the bottom of the river and watched the Dragon King Goo rush out. When it came close, he suddenly took out the calabash from the invisibility cloak and opened the calabash's entrance. The Dragon King Goo immediately slammed its head into the calabash as half its head drilled in. Zhou was originally afraid that the Dragon King Goo would resist, but to his surprise, after the Dragon King Goo discovered the space inside the calabash, it continued burrowing in. Soon, the Dragon King Goo's entire body drilled in. Zhou closed the entrance and the Dragon King Goo couldn't come out. The Dragon King Goo didn't seem to have any intention of coming out. It entrenched itself in the calabash. Without seeing Tai Sui chase after it, it obediently stopped there. Zhou never expected things to go so smoothly. He was somewhat surprised. Seeing Tai Sui, who had transformed into the Dragon King Gu, swim over, Zhou was somewhat curious. He rode on Tai Sui's back, and got it to rush out of the water with him. The Gu-rearing people he had encountered previously happened to be nearby. When they saw Zhou speedboat stop on the river and the girl still sitting in the boat, Zhou was nowhere to be seen. They imagined that Zhou had died and were about to save the girl when they suddenly heard the sound of water splashing. Chapter 808. I've already warned that fellow not to drive a speedboat into Dragon Corpse River, but he refused to listen. I'm afraid he won't be able to survive now. It's considered lucky that this little girl wasn't killed. However, without her family, how can she survive at such a young age? What a sin! As the Gu breeder spoke, he was about to go over to save her when he suddenly saw the water churn. A huge object rushed out of the water. Heavens! Dragon King Gu! That's the Dragon King Gu! When the Gu breeder saw the gigantic creature's appearance, his body trembled. He was so terrified that he even forgot to escape. Their legs went limp and they couldn't move at all. To Gu breeders, the Dragon King Gu was almost a godlike existence. However, at that moment they saw the Dragon King Gu lower its head in the direction of the speedboat. That little girl is doomed. They all imagined that the Dragon King Gu was going to eat the little girl. To their surprise, after the Dragon King Gu lowered its head, there was a person standing on its head. That person jumped down from the Dragon King Gu's head and landed in the boat. The Gu breeders couldn't believe their eyes. Someone actually dared to stand on the Dragon King Gu's head. Furthermore, the Dragon Corpse River's water was extraordinary. Humans couldn't touch the water at all, or they might become zombies. That person had come out with the Dragon King Gu. Clearly, his entire body had come into contact with the river water. When they saw the person's appearance clearly, they were even more shocked. That person was the young man they had seen previously. He didn't seem to have suffered any injuries. What was even more exaggerated was that he even patted the Dragon King Gu's head as though he was comforting his pet. Heavens! Is he the reincarnation of the Gu god? How can that Dragon King Gu let a human touch its noble head? Everyone was dumbfounded. Zhou also saw them and got Tai Sui to return to the river. At the bottom of the river, it transformed into an ancient tadpole and followed beside the speedboat. Zhou started the speedboat and left a long ripple on the river surface as he headed for the exit of Dragon Corpse River. Gu god. That must be the Gu god. The Gu breeder muttered to himself as he looked in the direction of the speedboat's departure in shock. How could humans treat the Dragon King Gu like a pet? Only a god could have such authority, and it had to be a god of Gu. From then on, there were legends of the Dragon King Gu and the Gu god in the vicinity of Dragon Corpse River. Someone even built a Gu god statue near Dragon Corpse River. A mysterious young man held a little girl's hand as he stood on the Dragon King Gu, as though he was about to soar into the sky. Later, the legend of the Gu god was accepted by more and more people. Many people in the southern district would worship the Gu god, but that was something that happened a long time later. After leaving Dragon Corpse River with the Dragon King Gu, Zhou set off for Mong Sat. After meeting Gu Shanshui, he returned to Luoyang. Although he didn't have Mute leading the way, Zhou had already memorized the route. Furthermore, with the Chick, Tai Sui, and Yer beside him, he didn't encounter any danger. On the way back, Zhou kept studying the fusion of the ancient splitting tadpole. Zhou ideal combination was to fuse the ancient splitting tadpole and primordial spore. If he could fuse a primordial spore that could split, it would be invincible. However, the compatibility between the two was too low. It was less than 20%. Furthermore, he didn't know what the outcome would be after the fusion, so Zhou didn't dare fuse them. He matched the few mythical companion beasts he already had with the ancient splitting tadpole, but he realized that their compatibility was very low. The only one with a higher compatibility was Tai Sui. It reached a compatibility of 69%. Zhou didn't dare fuse with it. Although the compatibility was very high, Tai Sui had the ability to restrain microorganisms. Even the Dragon King Gu was afraid of it. If he lost this ability after the fusion, it wouldn't be worth it. Is there no other fusion option? Zhou matched a few rare epic companion beasts with the ancient splitting tadpole, but he realized that the compatibility wasn't high. The only one with higher compatibility was the fiend-armored Tiger Soul General. Why is this thing so strange? Those that have high compatibility with it are all strange companion beasts. I'll take a look. If there really isn't any other choice, I can try fusing with the fiend-armored Tiger Soul General. Zhou was somewhat depressed and had no choice but to give up on fusing with the ancient splitting tadpole. In fact, Zhou hadn't spent much time grinding recently because he was studying the First Order of Chaos. He wanted to advance the Chaos Egg Life Soul to a perfect body. The First Order of Chaos was the same as the Tao Sutra. They were essence energy arts that mainly enhanced essence energy attribute. Zhou wanted to give it a try and see if he could push his stats to 41 points if the Chaos Egg advanced to a perfect body. After Zhou's research, he discovered some ways to use the Chaos Egg. This Chaos Egg had a very strong defense. Although it was only a primordial body, its defense was already comparable to an ordinary mythical creature. Zhou used the light concealment sword to cleave at the Chaos Egg and needed 2 strikes to leave a mark on it. If he used the Golden Overlord sword, he could split it apart with 1 strike. This was already rather sick. After all, it was only a primordial body. If it advanced to a perfect body, it might be able to withstand a mythical attack without any injuries. Also, inside the Chaos Egg, Zhou's injuries and essence energy could quickly recover. It was like a high-level repair device. The only pity was that the Chaos Egg didn't have any offensive abilities. It could only be used for defense and self-repair. As the Chaos Egg's ability was somewhat similar to Li Xian's Life Soul, Zhou wanted to ask if the Chaos Egg could advance only after being shattered. After a few attempts, although the Chaos Egg quickly repaired itself after being injured, it didn't become stronger. After all, after Zhou was injured, the Chaos Egg seemed to become stronger after helping him recover. No way. Could it be that this thing can only evolve by helping me heal my injuries? Do I have to seek a beating for no reason? After Zhou came to this conclusion, he was extremely depressed. However, the facts proved that the Chaos Egg was indeed becoming stronger while helping him repair his body. Furthermore, the Chaos Egg was very strange. It would only become stronger after Zhou was healed by different injuries. If it was the same kind of injury, although it would heal Zhou, it wouldn't become stronger. I have to choose the method of being beaten up. Isn't this life soul too sick? Zhou was so depressed that he almost wanted to give up on this essence energy art. However, after some thought, he couldn't find any substitute. All he could do was attempt to suffer different injuries in-game and let the Chaos Egg help him repair them. The Chaos Egg became stronger bit by bit. By the time Zhou returned to Luoyang, the Chaos Egg had already shown signs of advancing to an evolved body. Little one, did you bring back an illegitimate daughter? Am I going to be a grandmother? Not long after Zhou returned to Luoyang, Ouyang suddenly ran over and looked at Yer, who was sitting on the sofa, in pleasant surprise. Chapter 809. A dark cloud hung over Zhou's head as he explained, "How can I have an illegitimate daughter? I picked her up." "Picked her up? I thought she was your daughter. I thought I would have fun in the future." Ouyang was greatly disappointed, as though she wished Zhou had 10 illegitimate children. "If you like children, you can adopt one yourself," Zhou said. Ouyang rolled her eyes at him. "I have 2 sons and a daughter. Isn't it embarrassing for me to adopt a grandson? That punk Tianzhua is a letdown. All he knows is work every day. He doesn't even have a partner. I'm counting on you and little Jing now. Don't learn from Tianzhua. Find a wife early and give me grandchildren to play with. Sislan, I'm only a sophomore. There's no rush, right? Zhouwen was rendered speechless. Why not? It's easier to deceive girls in school. If you can't even deceive them in school, it will be even harder to find them when you leave, Ouyang said. Zhouwen didn't know what to say. Anyway, you have to be more diligent. I think that Wang Lu is pretty good. Unfortunately, she will definitely be in charge of the Wang family in the future. It's impossible for her to get married. By the way, don't you have a female classmate from Guide High School? Her name seems to be Fang Ruoxi, right? I think that young lady isn't bad. Her butt is big and she's fertile. Sis Lan. Have some tea. Zhouwen hurriedly poured a cup of tea for Ouyang, finally making her stop. Ouyang drank a mouthful of tea and glanced at Yer, who was sitting there. She asked, "This little girl looks pretty good, but unfortunately, she's not your biological daughter. What's her name?" "She doesn't have a name yet. I gave her a nickname, Yer," Zhouwen answered. Ouyang sighed and said, "In this era, too many people have died, and there are many orphans. It's still all right in Luoyang. There are special places to take in orphans. At least they still have a way out. If it were in smaller cities, orphans would really have no way out once their parents die. They can still live if they meet a kind-hearted person to adopt them, but in this world, how can there be so many kind-hearted people? You still need to cultivate and study. Furthermore, you are still a child. How do you know how to take care of a child? I'll help you take care of her. When you have time, go home and visit her," Ouyang said as she walked in front of Yer, wanting to hug her. "Sislan, Yer isn't an ordinary child. She's very sensible and doesn't need me to take care of her. She knows everything and can do it herself." Zhouwen hurriedly stopped Ouyang. Zhouwen had seen Yer's ruthlessness in destroying the Xiao family. He didn't dare let Yer follow Ouyang to the Yin family. If someone from the Yin family made her unhappy, the consequences would be unimaginable. What can a little kid like her know? "Don't worry, I brought up Tianzhua and Xiaojing myself. I have experience." As Ouyang spoke, she revealed an amiable smile, and spread her arms at Yer. "Yer be good. Come home with pretty sis, alright? Beautiful sister has a lot of delicious candies and beautiful clothes at home." Yer sat on the sofa and looked at Ouyang before turning his head to the side. The corners of Ouyang eyes twitched as she took 2 steps forward and came in front of Yer. She continued, "Follow pretty sis. There are many toys and delicious food." Yer turned his face to the other side as Ouyang followed. Zhouwen was rendered speechless. Ouyang had just said that other children were boring, but now, she looked like she had to bring Yer back. "Sislan, how's the investigation on Chu He?" Zhouwen was afraid that this awkward scene would continue, so he hurriedly found a topic. Furthermore, Zhouwen really wanted to know if Chu He, who went to Zhuolu, was real. On the surface, there's nothing wrong with Chu He who went to Zhuolu. All the timing matches. If you didn't discover Chu He in Netherworld City, no one would suspect that there's anything wrong with Zhuolu's Chu He. Ouyang paused for a moment before continuing, however, because everything about this Chu He is perfect, it makes me feel that something is amiss. However, I can't figure anything out, so I changed the direction of the investigation and investigated all the members of the team. In the end, all of them have clean backgrounds. On the surface, there's nothing wrong with them. However, I realized that all of them have something in common. "What is it?" Zhouwen immediately asked. After these people arrived at Zhuolu, most of them didn't or rarely contacted their families. Although communication isn't convenient now and there's no signal in Zhuolu, they will more or less return to the encampment. It's normal for them to call their family and friends. Even if there are a few workaholics or heartless people among them, it can't be that most people are like that, right? I went to see their families and confirmed this matter. They really rarely receive calls. Even if they do, they are the ones who called. Furthermore, the other party expressed that they were very busy. They hung up the phone in a hurry after a short conversation. Zhou frowned when he heard that. Could it be that many members of the former principal's team were like Chu He and were impersonated? From the looks of it, it's very possible. Ouyang Lan nodded. Who did such a thing? What's his goal? Zhou said after some thought. This is also what I don't understand. Among those people, many of them are authoritative figures in various fields. It's not easy to get someone to impersonate them, not to mention to do it flawlessly. Such a grand setup is not something an ordinary person can do. Furthermore, there should be a motive for doing all of this, but what is it? Zhuolu has been mostly explored. From the looks of it, there doesn't seem to be anything worth doing, Ouyang Lan said. Zhou felt that Ouyang Lan was right. To set up such a huge trap, the motive must be extraordinary. However, what was there in Zhuolu that was worth setting up such a trap? The former principal and company were only studying Zhuolu. They didn't have the ability to kill Torch Dragon and Qiongqi. Ignoring Torch Dragon and Qiongqi, even Aoyin could kill them all. If the other party had the ability to set up such a huge trap, they could have formed their own expedition team. There was no need for them to follow the former principal and company. What does the former principal and company have that others don't? Zhou asked. I'm also thinking about this question. Based on the current information, there's no valid answer, Ouyang Lan said helplessly. Zhou suddenly thought of the password left behind by the former principal and the metal block containing the strange coin. Could it be that what they want is that coin? Zhou thought. On second thought, Zhou thought of the silver-haired companion beast locked up in Qin Xiuan's shop. The large metal block connected to the chain on his body was related to the small metal block Zhou had obtained. If he hadn't seen the large metal block, Zhou wouldn't have imagined that the string of numbers the former principal had given him was a password. Could there be something inside that huge piece of metal? Zhou thought to himself. Chapter 8:10. Should I give it a try and see if that password can open the huge metal block beside the silver-haired companion beast? Zhou couldn't help but think. If it were in the past, Zhou wouldn't have had a chance to approach the metal block, but it was different now. With the invisibility cloak, he should be able to avoid the various surveillance cameras in the shop and reach the metal block without anyone noticing. Zhou could have gone openly and even bought the silver-haired companion beast, but he had a nagging feeling that there was something wrong with Qin Xiuan. He wasn't willing to let Qin Xiuan know that he was interested in the metal block. Ouyang Lan ultimately failed to take Ye away and returned indignantly. Zhou considered for a while before deciding to head to Xiuan's shop to take a look. Now that Ouyang Lan's investigation had reached a bottleneck, it was probably very difficult for her to make any progress. Perhaps the metal block that locked the silver-haired companion beast could give Zhou new ideas. After packing up and feeding the companion beasts that needed to be fed, demonic neonate began evolving again after eating a few longevity fruit. I should be able to advance to the epic stage this time, right? Zhou was delighted. Demonic neonate was one step closer to the mythical stage. However, looking at the number of longevity fruits he had left, he felt that they weren't enough to support demonic neonate's evolution again. Thankfully, I still have Grim Demon's rations. If it really doesn't work, I can make up the numbers. Zhou unsummoned the evolving demonic neonate. Before she fully evolved, he didn't need to count on her combat strength. Banana Fairy was still evolving. She had been evolving for quite some time. Based on the time, it seemed like she was about to advance to the mythical stage. After packing up his things, Zhou set off for Qin Xiuan's shop. Zhou didn't enter the shop directly. Instead, he went to a coffee shop near Xiuan's shop. He ordered a cup of coffee and sat by the window. He planned on drinking coffee while using Truth Listener to scan Qin Xiuan's shop. This coffee shop was relatively close to Xiuan's shop. Sitting here, Truth Listener's range could envelop the entire shop. He had to figure out the exact situation inside first. "Sir, your coffee." The waiter served the coffee and politely placed it in front of Zhouwen. "Thank you." Zhouwen's attention was focused on the Xiuan shop, so he didn't pay attention to the situation here. When he heard the familiar voice, he looked up and couldn't help but be taken aback. The person who brought the coffee over was Gu Dian. Zhouwen subconsciously looked around. Indeed, it was as he had imagined. The coffee shop was deserted without any customers. Does the owner of this shop have a grudge against money? He actually hired Gu Dian as a waiter. Zhouwen felt that the owner of the shop must have a screw loose. "Gu Dian, why are you here?" Zhouwen asked Gu Dian in puzzlement. "Working for money," Gu Dian answered. "Do you earn more working here than fighting dimensional creatures and selling companion eggs?" Zhouwen was somewhat puzzled. Gu Dian was considered a top figure in Sunset College. If he sold the companion eggs he obtained, his income was definitely not something the average person could compare with. Furthermore, he was only a waiter at a coffee shop. His salary wasn't much. Yes. There weren't many customers in the cafe, so Gu Dian didn't leave. "No way. This coffee shop can give you such a high salary?" Zhouwen found it unbelievable that a waiter could earn such a high salary. Furthermore, this coffee shop didn't have much business, so it was impossible for it to offer a high salary. 150,000 a month, Gu Dian answered. Pfft. Zhouwen spat out the mouthful of coffee he had just drunk. He widened his eyes at Gu Dian. "The boss here gives you 150,000 a month?" Zhouwen felt that the boss must be crazy. Otherwise, he had other motives. Otherwise, how could he give Gu Dian such a high salary? Gu Dian nodded. Then, when he saw a customer enter, he said, "I'm going to work." Zhouwen watched Gu Dian walk over and politely said, "Welcome." When the young couple saw Gu Dian, they seemed to be frightened. They immediately took 2 steps back and didn't even enter the door. They turned around and quickly walked away. "I knew it. With Gu Dian around, how can business be good?" Zhouwen couldn't figure out why the owner of this shop would hire Gu Dian. After taking a sip of coffee, he found the taste pretty good. It was actually hand-ground coffee. Unable to figure out the reason, Zhouwen had no choice but to put it aside and begin scanning the Xiuan shop. Truth Listener's ability enveloped the vicinity of the Xiuan shop. It was as though the shop had turned transparent. Zhouwen could hear every corner of the building clearly. To Zhouwen's surprise, in the 4th basement, the floor where the silver-haired companion beast was located was enveloped by a mysterious force as though it was shrouded in a thick fog. Zhouwen raised Truth Listener's strength to its limits as the 4th level enveloped by the thick fog slowly became clear. The various companion beasts imprisoned inside could also be seen clearly. Zhouwen focused his attention on the room where the silver-haired companion beast was. Indeed, he saw the silver-haired companion beast sitting beside the huge metal block with its head lowered as though it had fallen asleep. When Zhouwen's attention landed on him, the silver-haired companion beast actually raised its head and clearly looked in Zhouwen's direction. It was as though it was looking at Zhouwen, leaving him alarmed. "He can see me? Or is it a coincidence?" Zhouwen frowned slightly. Suddenly, the companion beast whose silver hair covered most of its face grinned at him. Then, its lips moved slightly as though it was saying something. However, he didn't make a sound. However, from the shape of his mouth, he seemed to be saying, "I'll wait for you here." Indeed, he can see me. Zhouwen was somewhat alarmed. After Truth Listener advanced to the mythical stage, its abilities were already very powerful. Furthermore, its hearing was different from using its gaze to observe others. Its gaze was active. When it looked at others, it wasn't surprising that people with sharp senses could discover it. However, Truth Listener's hearing was passive. It was only gathering information. The silver-haired companion beast was actually able to discover his location. This ability was a little too impressive. What's the background of that silver-haired companion beast? Zhouwen was puzzled as he hesitated about entering. Now, Zhouwen was somewhat worried. If the chain that bound the silver-haired companion beast was unlocked after entering the password, wouldn't he have done something foolish? What does he mean by waiting for me? Could it be that he knew I would come? Zhouwen was alarmed and puzzled. The entire matter was odd. From the moment the former principal sent him the password, Zhouwen felt that something was amiss. As the matter developed, Zhouwen realized that the matter wasn't as simple as he had imagined. At the very least, the silver-haired companion beast in front of him was definitely a terrifying existence. If the silver-haired companion beast had been placed in the store by the former principal, how could the former principal have captured such a companion beast? The former principal shouldn't have such strength. Chapter 8:11. Zhouwen decided to enter Xiuan's shop to take a look at the silver-haired companion beast. No matter how strong he was, since he was locked up and even a companion shop could trap him, there was no reason for anything to happen to Qin Xiuan and company. As long as I don't touch the metal piece or enter the password, I should be fine. Zhouwen made up his mind. After paying the bill, he left the coffee shop and found an empty spot. He put on the invisibility cloak and walked towards Xiuan's shop. Zhouwen had already figured out the situation in Xiuan's shop. Coincidentally, Qin Xiuan wasn't in the shop either. He avoided the spots where he might be discovered and slowly approached the elevator that led to the 4th floor. To him, there were no secrets in the entire building. Zhouwen passed through some ventilation tubes and quickly arrived at the top level. It wasn't that he didn't want to go straight to the 4th floor, but that it was completely sealed. There were no ventilation tubes that could reach there. However, this didn't stump Zhouwen. There was only one entrance to the 4th floor, a special elevator. It was in Qin Xiuan's office. Zhouwen remembered that the last time he came with Ouyanglan, she could still take him to the 4th floor. Now, the public elevator had been sealed. Only here could he go straight to the 4th floor. Since Qin Xiuan wasn't around, Zhouwen found an opportunity where no one was around and released Primordial Spore. He let it enter the keyhole and opened the lock from the inside. Zhouwen easily entered his office. In the same way, he opened the locked elevator and successfully arrived at the empty 4th floor. All kinds of locks naturally couldn't stump Zhouwen. Miniature companion beasts like Gu could enter the lock, so it was too easy to unlock it. In his invisible state, Zhouwen could do whatever he wanted in the shop. Soon, he arrived at the room where the silver-haired companion beast was. Zhouwen didn't enter directly because there were many cameras in the room. There were even several cameras installed opposite the room. Even if he opened the door invisibly, he would be seen by the people in the surveillance room the moment the door moved. Just as Zhouwen was considering how to enter, he suddenly realized that the electricity in the entire building had gone out. This was somewhat different from a power outage. If there was a power outage, it was only a power outage. Some equipment would still have stored electricity, such as electronic watches, cell phones, and electrical appliances with batteries. They could all continue working. But now the electricity in the entire building seemed to have been sucked away. There was not a single drop left, and all the electronic devices had lost their functions. Zhouwen immediately knew that it was definitely the silver-haired companion beast inside. Although there was a door between them, the silver-haired companion beast was smiling at him as though the door didn't exist. "You finally came," the silver-haired companion beast said. This time, not only did he open his mouth, but he also made a sound. It was different from how he had only used lips to speak to him. "You knew I would come?" Zhouwen didn't push the door open. Instead, he spoke to the silver-haired companion beast through the door. In fact, there was no need to open the door. They could see each other. "When I first saw you, I knew that you were the person chosen by Ouyangting, so you would definitely come? The silver-haired companion beast said. Why me? Zhouwen didn't ask why he was chosen because the other party would know that he didn't know anything. When the time came, he would consider if he should tell him. Now, when Zhouwen asked why he was chosen, the other party would always say something. Perhaps he could obtain some useful information from it before continuing to communicate with the other party. Because you aren't smart enough, the silver-haired companion beast said. Zhouwen looked at the silver-haired companion beast in a daze. He had imagined many possibilities, but he never expected such an answer. The silver-haired companion beast continued with a smile. There are some things that two smart people can't do. The person we need is someone who isn't too smart, but he's not stupid. At the same time, he's very talented. He can occasionally have an idea and focus on doing things. And then? Zhouwen asked. Then, you were chosen by Ouyangting. I think he has good taste. You are indeed someone who can focus on doing things, the silver-haired companion beast said with a smile. Then what can I do? Zhouwen asked again. I don't know. The silver-haired companion beast's answer once again exceeded Zhouwen's expectations. How can you not know? Zhouwen frowned. Because I don't know how far you can go, I don't know what you can do in the end. Different levels of ability mean different things you can do. When you were still a child, your parents wouldn't let you work to earn money. If you were a man, no one would ask you to use your stomach to give birth. Therefore, what you can do doesn't depend on anyone else. It's only related to your own abilities, the silver-haired companion beast said. I'm not here to listen to you preach philosophy. If that's all you want to say to me, I think I should leave, Zhouwen said. All right, then I'll say something that interests you. Do you know the levels of the mythical stage? The silver-haired companion beast changed the topic, but Zhouwen didn't understand why he would suddenly say this. Under such circumstances, there might be people coming to check on the 4th level at any time. Shouldn't he say something related to himself? Are you talking about the level above the mythical stage? Zhouwen asked patiently. That description isn't right. In fact, the mythical stage itself contains many different levels. The mythical stage you are talking about now is just the threshold of the mythical stage, the silver-haired companion beast said. Then what are the levels of the mythical stage? Zhouwen asked. If you want to know what level the mythical stage is, you first have to know what a god is. Do you know what a god is? The silver-haired companion beast said unhurriedly. Can our communication be simpler and more effective? I don't think I'll have much time to listen to your stories here. The people in this shop won't give me that much time either, Zhouwen said. The silver-haired companion beast continued without batting an eyelid. In ancient times, humans in a primitive society were afraid of the unknown and danger. And by materializing this fear, gods were born. For example, humans were afraid of lightning, so they imagined that the lightning was a terrifying life form. That was how the thunder god came to be. Humans are afraid of heavy rain because heavy rain can make humans sick, so there's rain god. Another example is those powerful creatures. Tigers, wolves, snakes, eagles, and so on. Human strength is no match for them. Due to fear, they worship them. They hope that they can be as powerful as those ferocious beasts. Hence, there's totem worship. It's also a type of god. Therefore, the first level of the mythical stage is the terror stage. Any mythical creature that can instill fear belongs to this level. This is also the weakest level of the mythical stage. Currently, all the mythical companion beasts on the rankings belong to this level. Chapter 8:12. Isn't this classification a little wrong? Many legendary and epic creatures can also instill fear in people, right? Zhouwen said. Sorry, there's a problem with my expression. This classification is based on dimensional civilizations. Legendary and epic creatures on Earth aren't qualified to enter the ranking of dimensional civilizations, The silver-haired companion beast said. All right, continue. Zhouwen shrugged helplessly. Floods, earthquakes, hurricanes, volcanic eruptions, and so on. These are powerful forces that humans can't control or resist. Once they happen, they can only wait for death. It's called the calamity grade, also known as the calamity grade. This is the second level of the mythical stage. To be able to reach this level of mythical creatures is considered quite accomplished in dimensional civilizations, the silver-haired companion beast said. Calamity grade? Zhouwen silently recited the name. Although calamities are terrifying, they will eventually pass one day. As for some powers, they are enough to destroy everything. In ancient times, people were worried that the sky would collapse. Some people were worried that the land they lived in would be destroyed. A power that can destroy the world is known as the apocalypse in dimensional civilizations. The silver-haired companion beast smiled and said, Of course, the so-called apocalypse is only relative to Earth. In fact, in dimensional civilizations, there are no existences that can truly destroy the world. Furthermore, in dimensional civilizations there are no so-called gods. There are only indescribable things. The so-called apocalypse powers don't cause too much destruction in dimensional civilizations. This has to do with the composition of the world. Compared to dimensional civilizations, Earth is just too weak. What happens after the apocalypse? Zhouwen asked. There hasn't been such a life form at the moment, so it can't be defined, the silver-haired companion beast said. Then, what level are you? Zhouwen asked as he stared at the silver-haired companion beast. I'm only at the Terra grade. In an ancient forbidden land like Earth, it's impossible for an existence above the Terra grade to appear. Why? Because this is an ancient forbidden land. There's no reason to speak of. This is the rule of the ancient forbidden land. Even if those terrifying creatures at the apocalypse stage enter the ancient forbidden land, they will still be reduced to the Terra grade. What's an ancient forbidden land? Zhouwen only wanted to know as much as possible. If he missed this opportunity, who else could tell him? I don't know. Since ancient times, dimensional civilizations have called Earth this way. Only a place like Earth would have such weak life. Therefore, many dimensional civilizations wanted to explore Earth and find the secrets here. In the past, there were several mythical wars on Earth because of this. There were traces of dimensional civilizations behind them. The silver-haired companion beast paused for a moment before continuing, as there have been too many divine battles on Earth. The weakened dimensional civilization creatures entered and ended up dying here. The losses were heavy. Now that the various dimensional civilizations had reached an agreement, they would no longer send a large number of their clansmen into Earth, nor would they trigger a war of gods on Earth. Each race would only send a guardian to Earth and sign a contract with the humans on Earth. They would fight each other, and the final victor would represent the dimensional civilization that would have the rights to Earth for 100 years. 100 years later, a new guardian will enter Earth and start the Battle of the Guardians again to determine the ownership of Earth for the next 100 years. Why must the guardians decide who the Earth belongs to? We humans are the masters of Earth, Zhouwen said. The silver-haired companion beast curled its lips and said, That's typical human thinking. In fact, humans are just one of the millions of lives on Earth. Humans used their powerful strength to conquer other life forms and become the rulers of Earth. Now that stronger life forms have entered Earth and become the new rulers, isn't that only natural? If you want to blame someone, you can only blame yourself for being too weak. You can't even advance to the Terra grade. That's the original sin. Zhouwen felt that something was amiss with the silver-haired companion beast's words, but he couldn't think of a reason to refute him. Why must guardians contract humans? Can't they just fight each other? Zhouwen changed the topic. Because guardians have a lot of room for growth, but Earth's rules don't allow existences above the Terra grade to appear on Earth. However, there's an exception. If you humans use your bodies as carriers, You can unleash power above the terror grade in a short period of time without being restricted by the rules of the ancient sealed zone. Therefore, Guardians can only continue growing and win by contracting with you humans, the silver-haired companion beast explained. I see. Zhou finally knew why the powerful Guardians chose humans to contract. It was all to win. With this in mind, it wasn't unreasonable for Guardians to choose to betray some weaker contractors. After all, there was almost no chance of them winning by following a weak contractor. Naturally, they could only constantly find stronger contractors. Of course, as a human, Zhou didn't like Guardians, much less the dimensional civilizations that treated Earth as a gambling table and battlefield. What if all the Guardians fail in the end? Zhou heart stirred as he asked the silver-haired companion beast. Haha, good question. Ouyang Ting asked the same question back then, but there's still no answer because no existence other than the Guardians has obtained the final victory, the silver-haired companion beast said. Zhou had already seen someone come down in the elevator, so he asked, "Someone's here. If you have something to say it quickly. What do you want me to do?" Ouyang Ting wants to know the answer to your question, so he has been searching for a way to win. However, his body can't take it anymore. He's too old, so it's impossible for him to participate in such a battle again. Therefore, he wants to find someone who can win the answer for him. From the looks of it, he has chosen you, the silver-haired companion beast said. Has he found a way to win? Zhou asked. The method is in this metal box. Open it and you will know the answer, the silver-haired companion beast said as he pointed at the metal block connected to the chain on his body. Zhou looked at the metal block, but he wasn't sure if the silver-haired companion beast's words were trustworthy. The elevator door opened and someone entered basement 4, heading straight for the silver-haired companion beast's room. It was none other than Qin Xiuan, who had rushed back. After realizing that the silver-haired companion beast was still there and that there was nothing wrong with the metal block, Qin Xiuan heaved a sigh of relief. However, he still ordered the people around him to search the entire basement 4. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.